Okay, I'm here for another episode of Reflections, and this one is going to be with James. Although, interesting enough, he made his alias GBJames, which is confusing for me because coming from the old school, I know that GB was actually Green Berets. It was a team that you were a key part of, and so I guess there are a lot of people in the world called James, so that is a good way to sort of identify yourself. So let's start there. Obviously, you go back a long, long way. In fact, of all the people I've probably ever interviewed for this series, except for people who play like Quake, you're probably one of the most old school people that I've interviewed because you go back to basically, I mean, it wasn't like the betas of Counter-Strike, right?
It was pretty early. I mean, it was, I can tell you that I found Counter-Strike on the day it came out as retail. So I'm a retail noob. Okay. I don't go all the way back. That was Platinum with GB. And to answer your question on the GB, why I used it for James now, I realized that I couldn't use the caret, which was my alias was always JAMES with a caret and then the S for like 10 years. And Hiko yelled at me nonstop to not put GB in front of my name. And I decided to do it anyway because of across the social media, finding anything that wasn't already taken is impossible. Sure. So I just figured that, yeah.
So just so I can get my timeline straight as we do the interview now. What years was it where you left and you weren't involved in the scene and you actually went, I believe, to war, right? Where did you go? Did you go to Afghanistan or Iraq or something? What were the years for that?
It was right when I was in the Marine Corps and I went from, I believe it was 2000, it happened, 9/11 happened. And then I can tell you the seasons in Counter-Strike. It's going to be difficult on the days. I can tell you that I think it was like season 6 or something of Cal Invite, and I had just gotten GB there, and my team had Rector and Warden. I recruited Warden on the team to replace me and had fRoD on it, who I cut. And that's why he always hated.
So I think this is 2003 then. I think that makes sense. 2002 or 2003.
That sounds. I think I came back in mid 2003. I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So, but there was a Green Berets from very early in Counter-Strike. Actually, like you say, in 2001, the lead up to. I mean, I don't really think of it. This just shows how gamers think. For me, the big moment in 2001 was the CPL Winter event. Which is the first big major. It wasn't 9/11. That wasn't as big an impact on my life actually, but. At the time, there was a Green Berets team. I remember it was one of the ones where... Okay, so here's an interesting question. In the early days of Counter-Strike, a lot of fans won't realize this, but because all the big American CPLs took place in Dallas, in Texas, almost all the big top teams, most of the players were based out of there. Like, you look at people in the teams like X3 and DOP and... Green Berets is another one, Texas area Untouchables is another one. A lot of the players were from Texas, and then what would happen is maybe if you were like a really amazing player like K-Sharp, you could be from another state and you could maybe fly in or something, if you had the funds for that. But obviously this is back in the days where people didn't have sponsors, and so you needed to be able to get to the LAN. Were you actually someone who was living in and around Texas in any way? Were you there from the very beginning of GB?
No. So what happened was I had, to give you... To answer two questions, I was from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. That's where I'm living now. And what happened was to answer that question well, I think I would talk about how I started in Counter-Strike would be to just do 2v2s. And I really started with Warden, the coach of Complexity now. We were in something called OGL, which was Online Gaming League. And I met him and his brother Mason. And I asked him, I liked him, and I wanted him to come play on my team. And he doesn't like that I talk about this, but I didn't know, I just thought he was amazing, like really amazing. And he was cheating the whole time. So I had to kind of condition him and give him lots of pep talks. I think he cheated one more time that I caught him. And then eventually he just, went on, and we just were best friends. And we 2v2'd for about a year, and that's all we did. And then he went to a main team and I went to a main team. But that moved itself into eventually meeting Platinum from GB, who he was being done with the franchise. And at that time, it was one of the major franchises. Sure. And he was like, I was like, I'd like to take it over if you're done with it, and I'd like to continue what you guys have built, and that's how that happened.
So it's funny you mentioned Warden, because actually, and I referenced this in the reflection I did with Warden, but one of the early moments in his career, which actually ended up being a big stumbling block, was that he was playing for Green Berets. You're a Cal Invite level team, which at the time, for everyone who doesn't know in NA, that means I think it was like 12 teams maybe were in Cal, 10 to 12. So that means you were like roughly in the top echelon at least, competing against the big level teams. But you went to a big CPL, I think it was the summer 2003 one off the top of my head.
I was there at that one. I didn't play. Yeah.
Okay, so this was the one where famously the team just went out in like the first match, basically, like the one that
I have a whole side story to that.
Okay,
but yeah,
okay, give me that. So essentially, the problem is though, the players online had done decently well enough, but then they basically flunked the LAN, right? And it was a stumbling block for a few people in this team. Sure.
So what happened to backstory on that was. I made the team, and we were in main at the time. I think it was main. There was no Premier. It was just main and then invite. And I got the team. It was Antimatter and Rector. I remember recruiting him out of like nowhere. And it was fRoD. I remember he was on Z4, and nobody wanted to touch him. They thought he was a cheater. And I liked him. He was very hot-headed and argumentative, but he was really good. And we went to the CPL together before that. But the one that you're knowing of, I remember exactly what happened. We got the team to invite, and we were going to play. I can't. One of the guys just recently passed away in the last 2 years. I think it was Trey. Did he pass away? IWA Trey. If anybody remembers that
issues with authority. Yeah.
One of the players on that team recently passed away. It was sad, but we were playing that team, and I remember getting a notice that I had to go overseas when Operation Iraqi Freedom happened. I remember being like, okay, I have to do this for my duty. This is what I need to go. And then the kid side of me was like, I just made Cal Invite. I don't want to go. Like, I have to play an invite. I just spent months getting here. So I ended up getting Warden for the team, and he took it over in the first season. And that's why there was a lot of turnover with Flobus and graphics coming in, I think.
I think Lethal was there as well, right?
Sorry.
Lethal was there, wasn't he? The guy who later went on to do that.
He was, yeah. Kevin Rosenblatt was there. He was on the team too. He was a good friend of mine. And then also, I can't remember the other person's name. Sorry. Noble was there.
Yes, that makes sense.
and so there was a lot of turmoil because I was the leader. So after it happened, it was kind of Warden was kind of the leader, and he didn't really have much stake in the team, but just kind of the spot. And he was my closest friend at the time, so it was kind of like, hey, take this spot and look after it and make sure it's good when I come back and I'm going to play and we'll do it together, Because I think at the time, he was on a main team that wasn't going to make invite, so I kind of just gave him the spot, you know what I mean? So anyway, I go 9 months. I snuck a PC overseas, and I was like deathmatching all day. And obviously I was washed up, and I wasn't that good to begin with. My skill is my in-game leadership and grit was what made me a good team leader. So I came back, and right at that CPL, I was like, hey, all right, and I was a little bit of a jerk. I was like, hey, I'm ready to play. I'm back. I want to play now. And they're like, no, cool it. Just come to the CPL, and we're amazing. You should check our record on Cal. We're doing so well. And that was with that kind of onliner season that they had. So anyway, they went there, and the whole backstory on that boot camp was they got wrecked. I can't remember the team's name. I think it had like ice cream on it or something.
Right. C9, right? It wasn't Cloud9, obviously, but I think it was C9, right?
I think so. And I'm pretty sure they lost to them, and nobody knew who they were, and they turned out to be a really good team.
I think they hadn't made invite at that point in time. They were just like a main team, maybe.
And Warden was incredibly embarrassed, and so the backstory on that of why I was like, okay, I'm here to play now, was they were constantly complaining about graphics, because up until the CPL, you always got that one guy where he would party and he just never came on to practice. So they had a really, really poor practice regime up until that CPL. Like they couldn't even play barely. So they were all upset and nervous over him. because they didn't get the proper preparation they thought they needed. And then at the end, they were like, so they're blaming him, and then they almost got into a fight. And I was like, okay, I'm going to take his spot. This is great. They're like, get this guy out of here. I'm here. And he was really close friends with Flobus. So that actually was the deciding part ways of myself and Warden, where we essentially became, at least I viewed him as an enemy, because he chose to, instead of having me on the team, he chose to be the person that had to be the ambassador of everybody's opinion of saying, no, James, they don't want to play with you right now. They'd rather play scrims in the BYOC to save face, so that they didn't look embarrassed of this big embarrassing moment that you're talking about. They were trying to save face. Even when they were knocked out of the tournament, like 2-0, they were like, no, Matt Warden was like, no, we must scrim. And they like got everybody around. They started like rallying to BYOC scrim. And I'm just like have your priorities straight. Do you know what I mean? So anyway, that's the color behind that.
Okay. So you referenced there, like fRoD was in Green Beret briefly. This was in the very, very early days. I mean, he initially came up in this team, and Art of Execution was another one he was in. And funnily enough, he was someone who had a reputation. It might be surprising to people now. They thought he was an onliner. And in fact, some people thought he cheated as well. Now, part of that is, first of all, he's a very good AWPer. And that's one of the most obvious weapons that it's easy to call someone a cheater with, because if they're just killing every single player as they run out, it looks like, okay, who's this guy? Have we ever heard of him? No, he's a nobody. Perhaps it's wall hacks, perhaps he's cheating. But on top of that, fRoD also, even when he was a very, very good LAN player, relentlessly talked shit, just constantly. He almost actually, in a good way, I would say, like, yeah, he had that kind of like Michael Jordan, Larry Bird thing where it's like you're almost looking for a way to talk shit about a guy so you can fire yourself up, and get kind of make it. It's not just a match. I'm kind of getting pumped up and I want to go against this guy. So since you saw him in the very raw days, the very early days, before everyone knows him as, a superstar in complexity, where he was so proven, what was he like when he really was just like a rookie?
He wasn't that bad. He was hot-headed. He wouldn't take blame very well. But what happened, I think, what really ripped him apart was, I didn't think, similar to like kind of like a simple, I didn't think that anyone could control him if I wasn't there. And I thought he would rip apart the team. So I actually selfishly, I could see what was going to happen. It would be like leaving Simple with like 3 other, meek people. He would rip them apart. I knew that the team wasn't going to last as is, so I cut him for just like no reason other than I knew it wasn't going to work. And that really hurt him. Like, he hated me, rightfully so, and I think he channeled a lot of that anger of the situation into just being a total badass afterwards. I've talked to him about it. It gave him, I think, a really solid chip of an FU to go and do great things. But I can't say, and he was a great person. I still talk to him. He's a manager for FaZe right now. He does great things. I was part of the people behind trying to encourage him. He saw some of the things I was doing with Liquid, and he wanted to come back into esports. And I was talking to him like every night on the phone during the stint where he was thinking about coming back to complexity and trying to play again. And I think that we bonded over some of the former things, because he used to wreck me from that moment on for about 8 years afterwards.
Okay.
I mean, even if you go back in the stats, you'll see he was the #1 person who killed me, like out of anybody else in the matches. He basically kicked my ass for 8 years afterwards, in a sense. So, but he was a great player. I think he was a great person when he played. He was just a young, chip on his shoulder. He reminded me of a PTR who talked a lot less, with the kind of the ego chip on his shoulder type thing.
Okay, so to tie into what you just said right now, one of the reasons why in the era of stats, so I remember the stats came around, I think it was in like 2005 or something on GotFrag, and they had stats which it might shock people now to realize. They were basically as good as anything we had in CSGO until maybe like 2 years ago, until HL3.org really kicked it into the next gear and made a lot of filters and stuff. We actually had stats way back where, you had ADR, you had the kills you had on the CT side, there was actually a decent amount of stats. And the problem is when this was introduced, it immediately had the effect that people will know it's had now, where people religiously check the stats after the match and they judge you based on if you have the most kills or the least kills or the most deaths. And famously, fRoD had the number 1 stats on GameSense. Now, I will say, that's what it's called, their stats system, GameSense. Now, I will say, part of the reason he was number 1, by the way, not like, Neo or Forest, is because not only was fRoD fantastic, but he also got to play the Cal Invite games, which got included in his stats, Now, with that said, the person who, at least legend tells us, had the worst stats on GameSense was GBJame, right?
Yes,
now, here's the thing, okay? The question goes like this, James. First of all, is it actually true? Did you have, the worst stats? And secondly, even though earlier on in this interview, you already sort of you started well, okay? You did some good PR. You said, even though my skills weren't that good back then, I was mainly there for the leadership. You say that now, James, but real talk. There was a while where it would have never been that sentence. You just said, no, you don't understand. Listen, the stats look bad because you guys don't understand the intangibles. You don't understand Counter-Strike. You kind of were, I don't know if I'd say in denial, but you had a very different perspective on the stats being bad for you in your playing career up until recently, right?
Yes. I let's just chalk that up to ego and poor self-awareness in some frames. So let me give you some highlights and some lowlights. Let me first talk about the stats. So they were a cumulative stat over 7 years. So when people would just look at the numbers to find the numbers, they were looking at years of stats. Does that make sense? So I had the highest, because I played, I tried to add them up. I think it's close to 30 seasons in Invite. If you want to count not just Invite, but other leagues that counted, Invite things. So if you count every game and every stat of how many times that I went negative versus positive, it was negative 1,000 was the joke. Okay?
Yes, that makes sense.
But if somebody came, for example, I don't even want to throw names under the bus, but a young kid was playing right now, he would have much worse stats than me if you took the time amount that he played. Do you know what I'm saying? Extrapolated, because typically those people don't last that long, who are that bad, right? So I look at it in 2 ways. I looked at my growth as a player, and I really focused on ergonomics. So that's actually what made me a really successful instructor. I think I was one of the more successful instructors, I'm going to say globally. I did SK Gaming's website. I did a lot of international lessons, and I did it for ESCA in the very early days. And so up until 2007. And what it made me realize is how bad of a player I was, made me really focus on the conditions of the game. So ergonomics. So I did a statistic. I think this is interesting. Somebody should do someday. Is I went and looked at the best people on LAN and statistics and how they played physically, and I found a trend where if people sat, I don't know if I'm going to sit up, but if people had their forearm rested, and a lot of people do this more than they used to, because they used to play I know it's corny, but T-Rexes, Shagwire used to play almost on a table like this. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And I used to study that, and that really helped me get better as a player. So physically, because I'm a big guy, I'm 6'2", I really focused on the ergonomics of the game, and then the fundamentals of good equipment and mouse movement. I focused every edge that I could use, I did in the game, and I taught it. And I helped a lot of people be pretty good at the game, and I brought a lot of people up. I would consider, people know Ocean now as somebody that brings young North American players up and selects talent and grooms it. I would consider myself the Ocean of today. So to answer your question on the thing about the skills, there's 2 parts to that question of how I understand it. Well, one was I sucked and I got better, and because I focused really hard and my skill got better. But 2, I was competing against for years Complexity and 3D who had salaries, and I never had that full salary thing. So it forced me to make talent where there might not have been, or groom talent. So I was doing the job of two people. I was focusing on coaching, and I always put myself near the youngest, like kind of like the twist of maybe Liquid. Do you know what I mean? On your team, sure. Right? And I would groom them. I'd tell them where to stand, where to sit, how to peek, what to do, and I'd really be almost coaching while I was playing. So I think that if I was in an environment like today, and I had hypothetically a coach, I still have delusions that I could play someday up until I'm 40 because Tom Brady plays. Okay, anyway, I think the second part of that is really. So yeah, the not having the skill and talent just handed to me. Because if you want to compare, again, I compare myself to Warden hitting his track. He had Jason Lake put fRoD, put Trip, put Storm around him and paid them salaries and got them players. Where I was competing at least on the national stage to maintain a spot and maintain a team that could almost compete with them with things that I had all created myself. Does that make sense? Sure. A lot of energy went to that where it didn't go to the skill, and therefore I just assumed that if I put that into myself and really got to focus on myself, I would have been decent. And I had some high moments at different times.
Sure. So as you referenced there, that is an element of your reputation, which, the kind of the results bear it out. You did take a lot of people who weren't known players before they joined GB, and either they became good in GB, at least to an invite level, or some of them did go on to bigger things. Some of them did become very famous players, such as fRoD, such as Warden. Another name I would actually reference would be a more modern day one, would be Mailer, a guy who went on later to play with Complexity and X3O and some of the top NA teams around like 2007, 2008. And you were one of the first people to give these guys a try. So one other thing that I wanted to get into is how you went about taking someone who maybe had some degree of talent, or there's something about them that makes you think, right, let's give this guy a try. And what involvement did you have? Because, back then, it's actually the same with a lot of sports. Like in a lot of sports franchises, say you have a really good coach, you tend to get the really good coach and you give him a really good team and you say, right, you're a really good coach, here's a really good team, just win now. It's actually very few coaches in traditional sports in the modern day who really have kind of like what they do at the college level, where you kind of train the guy and coach him at the same time. So I have to say, in CS, there haven't been that many people that you can really point to and say, right, this guy brought up talent, etc. Usually, if they're on a lower level, they just had to work with whoever they had, and then there wasn't a lot of coaching, they're just with the leader, Whereas I remember famously, there was a bunch of POV demos got released where someone had lessons with you, and in the demo, you're typing and you're talking and you're actually explaining some simple concepts like positioning, etc. But some things you even go quite in depth on, stuff like this is when you spray, this bullet's going to veer off a little bit like that, so quite technical details, which is akin to what you might see in coaching, like I'm talking about traditional sports, like if you were trying to help someone work on their jump shot or something, So what was kind of the process? How involved were you working with people? How did you find people in the first place and figure out which ones to bring to the team?
So do you remember POV Hero and Irokanji and them?
Sure.
So I'm going to give you an ego story where my brain makes associations that I'm super special because of something I did that maybe I didn't do. Okay. Just for, sure. So for fun. So I took over X3O and had Rockite and Rocky T and 9spot. Do you remember those guys by any chance?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So I took over that team and I was building X3O, and I brought in Pinecone, a friend of mine, who kind of like an anchor guy on anything I did. He just did his own thing. So I didn't have to train him or anything. I had done that way before. I'd helped him. But he taught me a lot too, to be clear. So what happened with X3O is I was looking at this POV team, and I had given Drew Irakanji a couple lessons way like a year and a half before his team started to get some momentum. And I saw it, and I remember him, and I remember thinking he was pretty smart, and I thought, okay, I like this Hero kid. He seems pretty skilled, and I mean, I watch a ton of demos. I do my homework. And when I look at, then I'll interview the person, and I want to know, I mean, I go into detail, like what are their family like? What's their family life like? What's their background? What's their sports background? You know, financially, how are they? What's their plans for college? Like, I need to know. I was actually going to have to write this down because I wanted to teach staff, because on a project that I'm doing, I'm trying to figure out what institutionally I have done for a decade, and I'm trying to put that so I can teach somebody else to do it, so I can do more of the business side things, you know? It's so much stuff, but I can tell you that when I got, one of the tests that I did is I made Hero drive 7 hours from North Carolina to the Extrio Land Center just to see if he would do it. Just to see.
It was in New York, right?
Yeah, no, this was in Maryland, Rockville, Maryland, for the Extrio Center. I did go to a bunch of Web 2 zones in New York, but this time it was in X3O. So I made him just drive just to see if he would, you know, for maybe we'll have a conversation. Do you know what I mean? Kind of like statusing him. Oh, you come, we'll see how it goes. And he drove, and I was like, okay, I like this guy's grit. And then when he came, I liked him, and he had mouse Excel on, and I'm like, oh God, okay. So I went through everything, like I look at how he sits ergonomically. I told him I wouldn't play with him if he had mouse Excel on. And I know some, like there's like what? How many world-class players do you think have mouse Excel on over the years?
There was very few in Counter-Strike. It was mainly a Quake thing, was mouse Excel.
Okay, so I mean, you would say that's not a normal pro thing. Would you
No, I would
agree?
say by default most people turned it off, and it's only very extreme cases, you know, unique people who had it on.
Okay, so I had him, you know, remove it because he was just really inconsistent with it. And then, I mean, I walked him through everything, like the motor I wanted him to op. I wanted him to figure out like his placement on every piece of the map, where we would go. To give details, not to just say everything. I'm thinking of what else. So I would find out, you know, the run of the mill. I'd say, okay, when you have these spawns, I would like you to tell me what you think you'd like to do. And he'd give me like his, you know, the survey of like what he would like to do. And then I'd say, okay, well, when you do that, if this happens, kind of similar, I learned to later of what Good for Nothing said, or not Good for Nothing, Nip.
Kanji?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
No, sorry.
An IP?
Yeah, Nip. I'm sorry, not Good
Threat?
for Nothing. But yes. So he told me if they get a pick outside, it was actually when we interviewed Alu for Liquid. Sorry, I got like lots of things going here. Alu said, in Nip, whenever we got a pick, we would converge on IV and T middle on train or something. Do you know what I mean? If then scenarios. This is what Fallen does. So I would create all these if then scenarios for people to make it really simple, so that they could be quick-witted on their decisions, and that the team would know exactly what would happen, when it would happen, and then we just kind of walk through that. So I'd really iron out, similar to what I'm very disappointed that Koosta did not have, is I would develop a motor for them. And it was like Koosta was completely unprogrammed, which is why I think that Ryu did a bad job, because if I would have gotten him programmed well, he would have thought for himself by the time I got him. I don't mean to digress. I'll talk to you about that later. But I thought he would have been programmed because he seemed like it when I watched his demos, but apparently it was Ryu controlling him, because when I got him, he didn't do anything. So that was what I was, when I take a player, I mean, I even did that with Hiko when we, you know, came into the game. So my relationship with Spencer, I don't know how many people know it. Some people know it. Was Spencer had just got, I think this is really interesting, a story too. He had just gotten cut from fRoD's team with Warden and Complexity. Do you remember this by any chance?
Okay.
He was playing 1.6. He was cut. And he was playing an invite, and he was playing on, I think, Punkville's team in 1.6, and he was kind of fucking off. And I was like, look, CSGO is going to be the next biggest game. The beta's coming out. This is your opportunity to really make a name for yourself now. And I saw something that Jason Lake should watch this, because this is actually one of the ingredients that he's missing of why his team was really successful in the first place. It wasn't that he just got a bunch of great players. If you look at how the complexity was formed, it was fRoD who essentially was cut from Hair, who made the dumbest mistake ever.
U5, yeah.
Yeah, because he didn't want to move into a house, so you're going to cut your best player. What are you doing? You know, I love him, but that was a really bad decision. And then Storm, I think, wasn't he cut on that same thing, right? Like he wasn't part of it.
Yeah, he was in the team that was like. I think
he was in the TSG one.
TSG, you're right. Yes, and they also did the same thing. He was another leftover from this.
Yeah, he was a guy who was like the best player on that team and was just cut because he didn't want to move in the house. And then I think the same thing happened with Trip.
Nearly all of them were rejected, as far as I remember. Yeah.
Yeah, but the point is, that's what they bonded over. They were all just like, I can't believe this is bullshit. I'm super pissed. Let's go fuck these guys up now. And in that bond is really sticky. It creates something really special. And they were, in my opinion, where you referenced it, I think in one of your videos, that it was kind of like this, like this haphazard group that's coming together, and they're, but what I looked at it as a competitor of theirs, I was like, oh shit, all the good kids who of all these teams for some reason weren't selected, and they're going to kick some ass because they're angry now, and they got to prove something. And Danny had such a motor, fRoD had such a motor put in him from Hair, anyway, so I just saw that happening with Hiko, and I thought, oh my God, Hiko's super pissed that he got cut from like his fanboy, because he used to fanboy on fRoD and all them, and now I was like, I'm going to take this kid, and he's going to be great because he's super pissed that he's going to have to make something. And so he and I did it together. We just sat in the server and just learned everything that we could about the game for CSGO. And I remember I paid him $5 to learn the smoke on Inferno. It was like an alt middle where it would bounce and land on the roof and plume so that you couldn't sit under the garage, like the whatever that balcony is, right when you come out of house. And he spent like 2.5 hours doing it. I never paid him the $5 until I came back to, right when I came back to CSGO. I sent him $5 on PayPal because he found it, and I never paid him. But that's the type of, I don't know, that's what I do with people. I just sit in a server and we grind and we focus on the fundamentals. And every person that's ever been around me for CS has been required to focus on the fundamentals of the game. And that's the difference. That's what I do. That's my secret sauce. When all these asshole young 16 or 18-year-old kids get into the invite level and they think that shooting 3 heads is going to make them great at the game, and they're getting these dopamine hits of excitement, and they're looking for 3 kills, acting like assholes, a young Stewie 2K just flying through smokes all the time. Good on him to actually become good. But you have to actually be good at the game and have a long tenured career. You have to switch and focus on being excited when you throw a smoke and then you add misdirection, or your smoke lands perfectly, or you spam somebody, or you have to focus on the little things, because those are the things that are going to make you consistent in the game, because you're not going to get those 3Ks anymore, because the spacing of the team you're playing is going to be so, you know what I mean, skilled, and they're going to trade you, so those exciting moments don't happen, and I think that's why a lot of kids fade out. So that's what I teach. That's what people who played with me learn so that they can be good players. That's a very long-winded answer to your question.
Don't worry about it, mate. So during the sort of the middle period, when it's still 1.6, but it's before the whole CGS era, so still the top competitions there, Team 3D, Complexity, etc. These were the teams I remember where you were at like an invite level, but for obvious reasons, the team was never going to like win a CPL or something. That was a bit outside of the reach. I mean, for a start off, it was an NA team, and aside from those teams I've listed there, 3D, Complexity, pretty much none of the NA teams used to be able to win a CPL. That was a level above everyone's kind of what was expected of them at least. But in these teams, one thing I always did notice was, sure, some of these players, like we're referencing, you found them, they became very good. Some of them went on to much greater things later. But there were a lot of players who were in some of these teams that were at the invite level with you who actually maybe weren't even that great at invite level. Like actually, there was something about the team element that allowed them to be good, that facilitated them to be good players. Like, for example, I'll give you one name right now, was you had a player on your team called Lucky Ted, who was the primary AWPer of the team. Now, I can tell you, I've watched this guy's POV demos. I watched them when he was in invite. And this was a player who, by all rights, should have been in main or premier or something, you know. He wasn't like fRoD, he wasn't like K-Sharp, he didn't have nutty flicks and all, you know, what you'd expect from a top AWPer. But he could play at a decent enough level in this team and in invite. So what sort of a team did you run? Like how much did you give people freedom to do what they wanted to do? How much were the people like setting a role and setting an area of the map they'd go to? What was your philosophy in that sense? Because you did have to work with a lot of people who were kind of like journeyman players, right?
Yeah, I there's two parts to that question. Remember the argument that we had when I was worried. I'm going to pause on answering that question. I'm going to pre-say it. So do you remember that the thing I was worried about, and I think is really important, I was worried that you and Richard at the time when you were doing your shows, and any other caster, was really going to teach North American CS when we needed all the help we can get, to focus on replacement of players rather than seek to solve their problems from within. So exhaust all
roster
options.
Moves.
Sorry, go ahead.
Roster moves.
Yes, every time, and as a way for press, and I think you guys, I mean, you're it. You and Richard and the crew, you're it for what people idolize and listen and internalize what you say. And I was thinking, oh man, every kid is just gonna, every in-game leader that's gonna come up, like look at Shinobi, he cuts everybody ever. Like he'll cut his grandma, you know what I mean? Like like to get to whatever he thinks is success. And I don't think that's going to lead to long-term success because you never develop the higher levels of your game. But something which is going to lead to this answer of why I think I made a mistake back in those days with some of those people is that I think I held on too long, and you
went the other way and just saw too much potential to improve, etc.
Yes, I was too good at developing that I did it. My ego got tapped into it, and some people adhere to it better than others. And the other thing is, it's a really taxing. I was trapped where I would put all my. And this is my own, I trapped myself on purpose. I put all my energy into developing the player so that I developed the reputation that I was terrible, and then nobody would want to play with me because I wasn't very good. So I had to make the players. So I was like a loop, you know? So I never really got to focus on my own game by my own doing. And I actually counseled Shinobi and some other young in-game leaders to that you really have to focus. You can't cannibalize yourself. I think Sean Garys does this somewhat at times, and it's a boundary that I actually learned from Spencer playing with him, because Hiko actually has really good boundaries. I think you know him; you're a friend of his, but he has really good boundaries for what he will and won't do. And I learned to have after that conversation and reflecting on myself, I thought, man, did I squander a lot of my CS time because I didn't want to cut people that I probably should have to get better players? Was I too nice? And I think I became a little harder after that, but tougher, I would say. So the reality is, to answer your question, yes, there were a lot of players that, I'll give you a perfect example. It actually has Garrett, the current coach of Rogue now, that had it.
Okay.
I had this kid named Cody, and I met him at a New York LAN, and that was his alias, CODY, and he was pretty good. He was pretty good at the New York local LANs, and I spent so much time coaching this kid. And then Garrett wanted to join. He was really playing well. And I said, okay, Garrett. And I said, but I can't cut Cody for the CPL. We're going to use him for the CPL, and then you're going to play afterwards. Well, wouldn't you know it, and Pinecone too, they're both close friends that I was going to have on the team right after the CPL, but I didn't want to make those moves because these kids had earned their right to be there because they played so much in the season and put so much work, and I had put so much work. Well, you know exactly where I'm going with this. What do you think they did? They beat Rival, a top 3 team essentially in the world because how they played at least at North American CPLs. Do you know what I mean? Right?
Yeah.
And they beat them with I think their full roster with Bombs and Torres.
Yeah, it was a massive upset.
Yeah, I'm sitting here like an asshole with fucking shitty kids that I should have kicked off my team for the good players. You know what I mean? Pretty good players, right? With seasoned more experience. Yep. That would have just been a hired gun to get him on my team. So I went to the end of the earth with that, and I learned that I kind of went on both ends of the spectrum. In the very beginning, I would cut anybody, and then I became like this kumbaya fucking, like camp counselor guy, like who was just going to teach everybody, and then I became a little tougher later. But anyway, that's the answer to that.
Okay, so actually, let's pick up on that thread then. So that was another player who came through the doors of GB, was Garrett, GRT, and he was someone where a lot of people won't know this, okay, because people don't know the history of 1.6, but towards the end of 1.6, as in pre-CGS, because he went off to the CGS afterwards.
Yeah.
Pre-CGS, he was actually like just peaking as an individual player. Like he was on the team as Pandemic at the time, which was one of the top NA teams, and actually he looked like he could be one of the next kind of crop of top NA players if the game had stayed in 1.6. Then obviously he went off to CSGO, and then later on, people mainly know him from CSGO when he became coach of CLG, for example, for a brief period of time. Yeah. So unfortunately, people in CSGO don't really know this guy and don't know much about him. And it seems from the outside, like for whatever reason, the coaching thing didn't really work out for him. Like he didn't exit CLG with the best rep in that respect. So what was Garrett like as a player? And do you have any kind of analysis as an outsider, but as someone who knows him, as to what hasn't clicked for him as a coach? Because every time I've talked to him, I think he's a pretty reasonable person, he's someone who has a background, I think, in hockey, so he knows like traditional coaching sort of things, but there is some sort of disconnect, I feel like, where he's not connecting with people in some way. So what about as a player and then as a coach? Okay.
So first, I can tell you exactly I'm going to give you 3 stories. Is that okay for this?
Sure.
So how I met Garrett is important. So I used to run something which was a political game. Do you remember Invite Scrim, like the IRC channel?
Where you go and you get the scrims, yeah.
Yeah, I think that, did you ever talk about that at all to any of your people, on the guests or anything? Like
not a lot. I might have talked to Moses about it because, again, it was one of those political things where like you don't let someone in if you think they're assholes and stuff, and then there's all sorts of beef on that sort of shit, or you kick them out if they don't play the scrims properly. I think people will be may I talk about that for a moment?
Sure. So Invite Scrim was the place to be, and it chokeholded all North American younger talent to come and get scrims. So it was an IRC channel, and it had one op, and it was the guy named 8Ball. And he ran the channel at 500 access. The other people below him had 450. And one of the 2 people was Torres, and I think it was Patio John at the time.
Okay. West Coast guys.
And yeah, exactly. And I somehow, as one of the one of the lower, maybe my status was higher, but my skill ability, it was a cool kids club of like Shagwire. It was the best of the best. K-Sharp. Sure. All of these people are in there. So I remember in the beginning, I was really privileged to be in there, really excited. And then I ended up saying, like, look, we need to maintain this. And so I ended up getting Torres removed. I don't think he ever knows that. Mark would be upset. And I got him removed, and I took his spot as like one of the managers. And then 8Ball left and just went away for like 2 years. And for a long time, Invite Scrim was run, I think, for like 5 years, 4 years. It seemed like forever, with myself and Patio John being the gatekeepers to letting people in. And I viewed it as the ring that corrupted anybody that had it, kind of thing, because it's a fuck ton of power on North American CS. But I tried to wear it pretty So Patio John never wanted to let anybody in, and I was the nicer guy who tried to let some. And the threshold was to get in, you had to beat a really good team on LAN. Like you couldn't just, even if you made it to invite, you were online as hell, you didn't get in. You had to you had to go to LAN and beat a team, at least a noticeable team, to beat your peers to get into the channel. Does that make sense? You might get one to get scrims, just because we didn't have to search everywhere to get them. But that was the bullshit made up criteria that I made to beat your peers to come in to invite scrim. And then later, Patio John pulled a fast one. Matt went and noticed that the 8 ball had been gone so long that he got ownership of the channel, and then it died because there was not the 2-party system in a sense where we could kind of overrule each other. It was like a perfect system for years because 8 ball was gone, but he owned the channel. So he didn't have any rule. So we had 2 people of equal caliber who managed the channel. So I don't know what they have nowadays. I think nothing is kind of the king of that, with maybe Hiko. I don't know. Anyway, so what happened was Garrett constantly begged to get in there, and he was doing some pretty good things in North American LAN. And then I let him in, and he was great. And I remember he played with Dead Zone, and he beat my team. He beat GB 16-14 at the CPL, I think it was. And I remember, so when we talk about me being bad, I was fucking amazing that match. I think I had like 35 to 36 kills. And I lost the match because I tried to knife, I think it was Talon in the back or something, up running. I was playing close B on Cobble, and I kept flanking middle and shooting them all in the back. Like I was timing it so perfect because I knew how they think, and I kept flanking them repeatedly and killing all of them. But why I mentioned that is that he played phenomenal. He carried Dead Zone, and I was like, oh, I gotta have this kid on my team now. And he saw my team and me and my credibility as a gateway to go wherever he wanted. So he came and played, and I remember he was an in-game leader. That was another thing that I really liked of him, was he led teams. He led some Canadian teams to almost invite, if not invite. So I really viewed that as you weren't just a kid that hopped on a team and invite and thought you were special. I like Ethan, but like, look, it's Ethan. He's 16. He plays for CLG. He didn't earn his way into invite. I actually helped him get to CLG. I kept him from joining a scum contract on the back end for an org that tried to take advantage of him. But and I helped him place him with Garrett because we were close friends. But my point is, he didn't earn his way there. He was just a good kid in Premier and then went there. But Garrett earned his way there. He deserved to be there. He could get there on his own with any people that he picked that could kill stuff. So I really respected that. And when he came into GB, Garrett just took charge of his third of the map. And I really played really well. That's what in-game leaders should look for, is he played phenomenal. I mean, I played really well with him because when he played, it was like I was only had to, instead of playing like puppeteering over 5 people or 4, I only had to like one other person, and Garrett handled the other third, and one person was on his own. So he really lifted. That's when you have a really powerful team, is you have almost like a secondary strong mind that does that. And rarely do you get somebody that can kill shit as well as he did 8-ball corner pocket, meaning I'm going to go here and I'm going to kill this fucker, and then you should do this because I'm going to do that. Like, and then do it. It's very rare. And he did that. And he pulled at the end. I mean, he totally did. I always give him shit. He pulled a fast one. This is a lesson for all of you kids that want to get out of teams, even in your contracts, which they probably don't have. They cover this. You're just like, back in the day, he's like, oh man, I gotta focus on hockey. I can't do this anymore. I'm just, I'm really wore out. I'm not feeling Counter-Strike anymore. And then literally 4 days later, he was on Pandemic. And so that's how you do it, right? When you don't want to, so he did that. He pulled a fast one. But he's great. So why he's not doing well in coaching? The answer to that is because he's a fucking asshole that has an ego and he's trying to be me and he's biting off too much that he can chew. So he went into CLG, and people are gonna say, oh, like they're gonna bullshit. Like, so let's be clear. Hazed is not a fucking in-game leader, and he's not good at in-game leading, and I barely think he had a reason to be on CLG, and I really like him. I just don't think he's that good of a player. I feel like he was I feel like he's my skill, but without any in-game leading and a bunch of crybaby shit. So, and that's a bullet flying across him to figure out what the hell he's going to do next. Because he was going to in-game lead for Garrett. Like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, that's terrible. And I would never want that for my in-game. Oh, I got to teach somebody how to in-game lead, and that person is all about it. That's a huge task. That's everything else better be in a perfect row if I'm going to do that. And then he had Ethan, who's like 16, and he's never played Invite. And then he's a fucking asshole. I counseled him. I said, Garrett, do not get two young people. Do not do it. Just get one. And his ego, no, I'm going to do this. And he gets fucking Sabrosa, and he thinks, oh, I'm just going to be great because I'm going to get Sabrosa too, who's a fucking known cheater. And he gets Sabrosa, and then that kid comes in, and he has to coach those two. Oh, by the way, you have Koosta, who doesn't have any motor and can't do anything by himself half the time, and he's like super quiet. Like, he's just, I say these things, and I'm being tough because I want people, like somewhat of what you do, I want people to be better than they are. I have high expectations, and Koosta just does not meet any of my expectations. He is my biggest disappointment I think I've ever had in Counter-Strike. I'm not joking. Like, Koosta is the biggest disappointment to me of what I thought they were going to be, and then their work ethic behind it, and the drive that they have, and their adherence to giving a shit and just doing what they need to do and being excited about it and kind of bringing people around that. There was none of that. I really hope I say this so that that he rallies and becomes the person that I always thought he could be and should be, because I think he could be one of the best players in the country. So I think that the disparity was there. So Garrett had an in-game leader who, I don't really feel like he had his niche. He's really, Hazed is really political. He's really smart politically. He makes friends with people really well. He's a really nice guy. I think he adds some of the team chemistry where he's really a glue guy, but I don't know what value he brings to a team. And then him switching to an in-game leadership and then not fully embodying that role and understanding how to do it. It was just too much for Garrett. It added 4 fires, and then he said, I'm going to create this team and build you this team. And then he had they gave him 3 months, and they got scared that they're going to lose their invite spot, and they pulled the plug on him. So I put that at 50%, Garrett's fault for knowing what the fuck he's getting into and not executing. And I counseled him hard to do it right on Rogue, and I told Hiko if they wanted me, they could pay me, and I could help them as a supportive coach so that Hiko could be successful, because he's going to run into the same thing in Rogue if they're not careful.
Okay.
Anyway, it's a long answer to that one, but it's a lot of good information.
So this is maybe a way for us to move forwards in time and get to CSGO, which is obviously, like we've said, there was a period early on where you went away for the military, and then you came back, and then there was the period in CS where we had CGS happen, and then that was a big shake-up in the scene, and then there were a few years where you were out of it and you came back. So since some people, especially maybe fans of By the Numbers, the talk show we used to do, might know that initially where you were mentioned on this show was obviously when you came back to CSGO, there was this news post, and then there was a short interview done with you on the Team Liquid site. You became the Team Liquid coach in due time. And obviously we roasted you for some of the things you said in the interview. And famously, me and you had a little tete-a-tete, is how they say it in French, like head-to-head. We had a little moment, where we argued at a LAN for the amusement of Hiko primarily. But that happened. So anyway, I want to build into that. So the first question before we get to that point is this. I once heard a story about you, which as far as I know, you put out there, which is that back in the days when, yes, you were a military man. So people have to imagine, think about what most gamers, especially were like 15 years ago. They're skinny little nerds. Some of them might be 17 years old. They don't really have experience of the world. But here's the biggest problem. Because they're really good at a video game, they talk the type of shit that someone would only talk in real life if they were like, a fucking Bruce Lee, like no one would ever dare talk the way that they do online in person unless they were just insanely top. But a lot of these kids, because they get so big in gaming, they go to those LANs and they don't actually realize, there's an online way to talk and there's an in real life way to talk. So I heard this story, James, that you went to a LAN, I think it was a local LAN, and you basically got into some sort of a physical altercation with two players. They might even have been brothers or teammates or something, and you 1v2'd both of them and beat them up or something. And so it's very truth to this, because you seem like a very reflective guy now, but were you a bit of an asshole at times in your earlier career in life?
So yes, but so there was a fight. It was never mentioned by me, I don't think, ever. I don't think I've ever brought it up. It's something that people bring up to me, and I do not actively dispel rumors and set the record straight. So here's exactly what happened, if you want to know. I got into a fight at Web2Zone with two Asian brothers who were they were players of Moofer, and Shagwire was there, and he was ringing for their team. And so we had just lost to them in some qualifier. I can't remember, 2D, Two Dimension was the team. And they had just beat us online, and we played them. It was Moofer, and it was really important. It was like a really important qualifier on LAN. And we were playing them, and they had crushed us online. And I was pretty convinced that one of them was cheating. And when we went there, we wrecked them. I mean, I called an incredible game, and Shagwire was destroying us. It was on Inferno, and he was opping left middle. We're terrorist site going up. He just wrecked us. And it was almost like playing two teams. We were playing the team we just got wrecked on, plus a Shagwire at his world best.
Yes.
And I think it was an NOA at the time. And we beat them 16-6. It wasn't even close. And I was just schooling them. They didn't know which way we were going, so much misdirection. And then afterwards, I called Bigwee, I don't know if you know who that is. You probably do. He called me, and he's an instigator. So he calls me and he's like, hey, dude, how you talk shit to them right now, talk shit to them. You gotta go up to them and tell them that they're fucking cheaters. And I'm like, man, and I'm like, all right. And I just got totally, it was like Jedi mind trick, just manipulated. And I was just like a big dumb idiot. And I just walked over to him and I was like, hey, good game. You fucking cheated online, and you're terrible, so you probably shouldn't come to LAN anymore, or stop cheating online. And they were they ignored it a little bit, and I was like, hey, no, but really, you guys are fucking terrible. And I just kept goading them like an asshole till they jumped on me and started fighting me. So, I mean, at this point, I was just outside of Web2Zone. Why are you laughing? I just threw one of them off, and then I got hit in the back of the head by the other one, and I threw him into the other guy, and that was really it. I mean, it was they were little. I mean, they were tough as shit, though, and then the rumor mill take that story I ripped two guys' heads off or something. It wasn't like that. I mean, in esports, in a LAN fight, it might have been ooh, you know what I mean? But that's
okay.
I was the instigator. I was the asshole. They were just defending, and I was kicking them when they were down. Okay. I was an asshole. That's really the answer to that question there about the fight.
But where this leads, though, is that when you came to CSGO and you did this interview, one way you could do a comeback, right, is you could kind of do it very quietly. You come gradually back in the scene, and then what happens is it's like meeting someone at a dinner party, okay? People gradually get to know you. Like, they ask you questions. Oh, what did you do then? And then what happens is, the way it unfolds is very organic, and people feel like, oh, I know this guy now. But instead, you came back with sort of it's almost like you paid for like a billboard to be in like Las Vegas, like GBJame's coming back, legend of the NA scene. I made fRoD. That's almost what this interview is like. You wanted to just come out, all guns blazing. Everyone will know who I am. Like, you just tore up the whole scene. And it was pretty bold, right? So tell me, what was the thinking? Why this move?
It was insecurity plus. So let's talk a little shit on Moses for fun, okay?
Sure, I love to.
So Moses, I love him, but he has a fucking chip on his shoulder to me that needs to disappear. And it starts how I know Moses. And I know Moses is the long-haired hippie brother of a brilliant brother who was a really good in-game leader, who I went into servers with and knew for years and worked. And like, I was in the server going over things that I was practicing and ideas. And when fRoD was being taught like on CPL Fire, I can vividly remember the new map coming out and we were talking about it. And while we're doing me and Hare and fRoD listening and talking about all these different things, and multiple times, these things that he was never privy to, he was just like off in a corner shooting walls and shit. Do you know what I'm saying? He was really handsome. He's still pretty, okay? And he just was just like this hippie pretty guy who just got girls really easy and didn't seem to have to apply himself at all. Okay. And his brother was like a hard ass worker and he was just all fucking business. And I just thought he rode on his brother's coattails completely. And he was really fucking skilled at the game. He was just like, as if God just, the assholes in high school that are just gifted, and they didn't have to earn any of it. That was him. And I didn't see any of the fun, but he did everything his brother told him, and he was a great sidekick. So for me to watch him come and be an authority figure and an NA's top mind for Counter-Strike just fucking blows my mind. So fuck him, but he has since become that. I think he has I listen to what he says, and I think he's become that. So I don't respect his authority at all as somebody that I have to receive validation for. And that sets him, that sets us at odds. That sets him, I think he has as much insecurity to his right to that throne of saying he knows what the fuck he's talking about. I have 10 years of in-game leadership experience at the pro level. What the fuck does he have? He played with his brother and got told what to do. Do you know what I'm saying? Like when we're going to talk about a game objectively. So this is a year and a half ago. He is not the same person. He's a total badass and could squash me in media and has since worked extremely hard to become somebody that I really respect in the role that he has now, and his mind in the game. Okay, but that's my thought coming into it. Who the fuck is this guy? And he's gonna have any opinion on me? Get the fuck out of here. So. And it was also like Sir Scoots was always in the background in Gotfrag. I never really saw him for years. So what he did really great things with EG that I didn't know about. So he had an opinion. I mean, he was always around DOP, all that stuff, but he never really had a focal point in esports that I ever knew. So, and you, I didn't know too much about you. Okay. I did know that you did the fRoD thing, right? And I never heard of Richard Lewis because he was in Source, right? And he only came around in 2007. So so I guess what I was thinking was, I was like, who the fuck are these people? And where are all the people that I knew when I quit 3 years ago? And these people are just going to take over and say what's what in North America. Fuck these people. And I'm great. So I came with a true asshole. I came at it as if I didn't need anyone's validation or opinion. What I said, and if anybody like the Craig Levines of the world, the people that I knew have since moved on to much bigger things and much of power. Like Lethal's, he's like a millionaire, with ESL. Do you know what I mean? So a lot of the people that I knew are really successful now. But you guys, but on the other flip side, you guys, I didn't know your history. You have been around as long or longer than me, and being a historian in every walk of it, like the things you remember, I'm like, oh shit, like how does he remember any of that? And Richard Lewis was a fighting for the scene. This is what I came to appreciate afterwards. Yeah. Richard Lewis is fighting. I went back and looked at some of what he was doing, his old cast. Like, he's been fighting for the scene. I actually listened to some of his political news just to appreciate his opinion, because I really value his opinion being so current on a lot of things. So he really toes the line on things that I may or may not agree with, but I appreciate him expanding my thought on that. So I always try to educate myself on his thoughts, because I value his opinion. And Moses I view him as really holding the NA torch. So I would say that I take back a lot of my things somewhat. And if I could come back away, I would. But I think it was a little bit of me not having any relationships with any of you who were here, and then me strategically looking as if I needed your validation, and I didn't feel that I did. But I got fucking wrecked afterwards. Sure. So this is a note. Do not piss off media, because when you're trying to do your work and be good, they are doing media, and which means they can just fucking wreck you for like a year. And I pinned myself. Think about this. Go ahead.
No, keep going.
I pinned myself. So if you look at it, 2014 is all of the streamers and cast, or the Twitch and everything, right? All these 14-year-olds and all these young kids are coming. An entire new era of Counter-Strike. And if I died there, if I let you guys beat me, Thor and Richard Lewis, you guys roasting me every day, I'm total shit, I'm a fucking joke. If I didn't do anything of any value, I would have been erased, in everything I had done up until that point in esports would have been erased. So I was fighting for any reputation that I had in esports, and you guys are fucking ruthless. So you made me be as good as I could be. And I was working, people don't know this, I work in economic development. I have bachelor's, master's. I work in economic development for the county. It's a nice job, and business development. I focus on bringing and supporting business development in Allegheny County, which is Pittsburgh. And I was going home at 4:30, getting home at 5:30, eating. From 6, I was in the basement on my computer coaching Liquid until like 1 a.m. And then I'd wake back up at like 6:30. And I did this, I put on like 35 pounds, and I was just not going to fucking lose. Do you know what I'm saying? I was just not going to just get wrecked. So yeah, I did that to myself. So maybe I could have done it a lot better. I'll tell you.
Okay. So, here's the thing. Obviously, there's that element, which is that you did come in with ego and you were confrontational. So that already is going to have people, either they're just going to battle you with trash talk, and there's going to be like some back and forth confrontation. But I feel like that combined with the way you talk publicly is what made, it's that mixture that was the problem. Because here's the big problem, is not only did you battle people, therefore they were looking for a way to be confrontational back with you, but I've also noticed, right, this is one of the big problems with coaching, and why I think it's so tough to actually know as an outsider who is good and who isn't, because really you'd have to be there in the room and see what the guy's working with. Like, sure, you can look at results and you can say if they failed, then now that doesn't mean the guy's a bad coach, but he might be the wrong coach, for example. But I have to say, the problem with a lot of the coaching things, it's a bit like how you can have pro players who are amazing at the game, but they can't teach their teammates because they don't know how to articulate it. They don't mentally know how to model the game. They just know that they do things and it works, So in the same sense, there are coaches who, one-on-one working with a guy or working with a team, they're fantastic coaches. But if you ask them to do an interview about why they coach, they might come off, like, for example, I think, here's the simple way to say it. When people have heard publicly things that you've said, obviously the infamous line at the MLG where you said, like, make a play that makes you dick hard. The problem is, if someone knows the shorthand of what that means to the player and what you've said in the past that builds up to that, and then why you've said that emotionally in the moment, it might be a brilliant thing to say. But if that's all they hear from the outside and they think, right, that's how he coaches, they're going to think you're an idiot, right? Which is, I've noticed that's one of your problems. It's like, how do you get across to the wider audience who don't know you personally and what your ethics are and your ethos for the game? How do you get that across? It seems like there's been a disconnect there, right?
Yeah, I've never had to argue for that. I wasn't a good. So you know what? Hiko's in a little bit of trouble for this. Okay, so here's what I told him. He was in Nihilum. He lost 16 to like 2 to. Do you remember the time when he lost in Nihilum? Who he lost to? It was like Shazam's team and somebody else, like kids that aren't ACUS and stuff. You know those kids. Yeah. So he was at an extremely low point. And I'm like, I got this guy Flow Stick and he's terrible. Do you want to not be terrible and stop taking so much money and come be, this is really important. Come be good at the game again and do and adhere to the fundamentals and give a shit and come play and we're going to build the best team in North America, 100%. It's not even a thing. Do you want to do that? And he's like, yeah, I actually, okay. And I was like, I don't know if it's going to fit money-wise. And I was like, no, it's going to be fine. I'm going to talk to Liquid. And I'm talking to Steve, and he's like, hey, I can do at the time it was like 3,500. And I'm like, okay, what's the lowest or the highest you'd go, Steve? Because he's making a lot more than that, man. And he's like, 35, 4,000 maybe. And I'm like, okay, what's the lowest you'd take, Spencer? Come on, we got to do this. And he's like, dude, maybe like 3,500, maybe. I'm like, fuck yeah, this is great. You know what I mean? Sure. And that, like, within 2 days, that's when Richard Lewis posts his story. So I'm trying to get Spencer to stop fucking around and focus on just earning money and really play, like, world-class competitive CS. And then fucking this random guy, Richard Lewis, is posting this story that maybe Steve put out there, I don't know, to put pressure on Hiko, and then my reputation, because Steve, like, what, he's going to believe me over maybe Steve or something, or whoever the fuck put the story out there that's giving him this information. Fuck no, I'm the one, I put these two together, they're going to get this money, and they're going to work, and then all of a sudden, Hiko wants double or triple. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, I remember. Fuck no, that's going to put pressure on him to get him to take less. So, like, that wasn't, I do not, and I asked Spencer, I was like, is this what you're doing? Are you fucking with me, telling me something different? Because I got other people I could grab. And he's like, no, it's not what I'm doing. I'm really pissed that this story's out there because that's not true. And then I started sticking up and I started picking on Richard Lewis. Like, and I didn't even, if you go back, I don't think I deleted any tweets, but if you go back, it's like, I was just like, sorry, your facts are wrong. And he's like, fuck you, I got real facts. I checked my sources. And he's a little sensitive to that because you have to be, I think, a little bit, because with journalism, people, that's all they say, right? Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, that's what they say. Yeah. So, and his sources were probably 100% legit, except I think it was a bullshit story. I don't know where it came from. So, unless everything that I knew was a lie and Hiko's lying to me, whoever told him, that guy's fucking lying. So it instantly made Richard Lewis go on like this angry thing where he's just like, I started calling him a liar. And I'm like, no, I didn't call you a liar, bro. I said you got bad info. And he's like, you're calling me a fucking liar. And I'm just like, that's not what I'm saying. So anyway, I was on a point on that. What was it with the, sorry.
It was about like how you can come across looking very simple or like you don't articulate yourself to the wider audience, though, compared to what your coaching might be like. Yes, sir. Okay, so I said, Spencer, come here. I'm going to put in a fuck ton of work. You're going to look like a god, and all I want you to do is throw me some bones. And if you look early, he purposely took me in front of the camera, which I probably didn't do a good job, and like, he gave me credit like a couple times in the very early like qualifiers and stuff. He's like, James is really helping us. James is really doing a good job. He was honoring that. And then he got caught up into it and he forgot it. And he just consumed any of the work that I was doing. He just ate it. And then he started saying fucking crazy shit like,
yeah, he's just a rah coach. I'm like, bitch, I'm telling you where to fucking go. I'm drawing shit in circles on a fucking map, and I'm like writing numbers down. I'm literally trying to teach you how to be an in-game leader. I was an in-game leader for a fucking decade, and you're gonna say that I'm a rah coach? You know what that is? It's fucking bullshit. It's because those fucks, EliGE, Nitro, fucking Hiko, they didn't want to do the work, because Spencer's used to just be in the fucking fifth where he just shows up and doesn't do anything, and he's just like, hey, I'm gonna be the Hiko, hi, I'm gonna bait, I'm gonna just stay back here and do nothing, bait you, and then be amazing, which is, by the way, statistically where he's at his best, where he gets like 2 kills or 3, is where he just baits off people, and just, so he baited the shit out of me, like metaphorically in the situation.
Sure.
And what happened was that, here's the problem. Here's my coaching style. I ask you questions. If you were on a team with me, Thorin, I'd ask you, I'd be like, so why did you do that play? And you'd be like, because I thought there was 2 here. And I'd be like, okay, so why did you do that? And I'll ask 5 whys. And I'll keep asking you. And then when I get to your logic of why the fuck you did the shitty thing that you did, I'll start asking you, do you think there's an alternative? And I'll make you fucking figure it out for your own goddamn self. And if you are too stupid to do it, I'll give you the answer. But I won't give it to you easily to make you work for it, so that you can develop a fucking frame of thought to be able to think for your own goddamn self. This is what Fallen does, I think, somewhat. Because he makes if-then scenarios. He teaches Taco and all those other people to think for themselves. And so these kids are weak-minded, some of them, and they don't want to fucking do it for themselves. So they just want you to tell them what to do. And that's when the game graduated to this 6-man in-game leader. Well, then now they don't have to fucking do anything. They just be told what to do and whatever. So I never did that for 2 reasons. Number 1, I didn't want to give up my real job for fucking shitty wages for Liquid to go full time when they weren't willing to pay me any type of real wage. What would have been comparable to my talents, energy, and effort, and also would have made sense financially for my family. And it's a huge risk. I mean, what are you going to fucking do after you get fired from being a coach? You know what I mean? So I held back on purpose because I didn't want to be needed if I couldn't go to a LAN, because they would be so dependent on me that I would in-game lead and do all those things. So I was strategically not doing that to make them better players to think for themselves. But also, that would have made the commitment from when I started to where I got them, in the how CS fucking exploded, was, I mean, I was one of the first coaches in America that really started doing it, if you remember that, really. So I really set the precedent, I think, one of us. So I was almost getting consumed by my success, and I would have had to leave and do my own thing, and I didn't want to do that. And 2, I wanted them to earn it first, to be able to think for themselves, and then I would lead them in some way. And I never, hopefully that answers it. Okay. But so what happens is, when the players, they talk about it, they come up with the fucking answers themselves that I literally baby stepped them. I drug the fucking horse to water so they could drink it. And then the horse looks up and is like, I did this all myself. Yeah, bitch. No, you didn't. Like, no. So that's it.
Okay. Right. Well, obviously in the Liquid part, as people can tell by your demeanor, there's a lot of shit went down behind the scenes there. I know a little bit because I know Hiko, but I wouldn't claim to have all the insight, because obviously each person has their own biases. They tell the story. Everyone tells the stories that they're the hero, and they're never the one who did the shit wrong. So let me ask you about a few of the players. So actually, the first player I want to ask about is probably going to surprise people, because I'm not going to go straight to the drama of like Simple or Hiko or anyway. Yeah. The first player I actually want to ask about is Nitro, because one thing people will forget is Nitro is essentially, to this day, living off the reputation of what he did when you were his coach, actually, because that was the period, end of 2015, where he was at his best. That was before you guys had Simple. That was when he looked like he looked like the best NA player. He really came into his own. At the time, him and EliGE were like the entry duo, but EliGE hadn't blossomed into the player he became later. So actually, this is probably the only period of Nitro's career, when I look back now, where he looked like the player everyone thought he could be. Like, all his potential was unleashed. He was a really great player. Ever since then, he's had a lot of problems. He's switched roles a lot. Obviously, he's not been the star player. He's had other talents in his team. What do you make of this guy? What can you tell me about Nitro? And what was your philosophy for how to use him as a player?
So the first thing was he's so frustratingly meek as a person when you want fire from somebody of his skill and talent, that you want to smack him and be like, wake up, get in the game, do what you're supposed to do. I mean, you talk to him, he's a nice guy, and he's just, as somebody who had so much energy like myself, I couldn't get it out of him. I did though, because he wanted to lurk, and I had to I felt like I had to stick like a sharp stick in his back and just constantly keep him on the front lines and stop saying like, and he'd be like, nah, I'm good back here. I'm going to do these. And I'm like, no, go forward. You have to shoot shit, get up there and do it. And when he would do it, I remember so vividly on the time when we beat HR at the major qualifier. And when we first made it, I can't remember, yes. But I remember brilliance came out of him at the end of the game where I watched him go to the B tunnels and check everything at the appropriate, like perfect crosshair placement, and then throw this smoke. And then he came around the car and killed a guy, and then he turned up at like the window area and killed another guy. And it was methodical. It was machine. It was brilliant. And I thought, how do you not have a mirror of yourself and see what you're doing and see how valuable, and to get into a site and not just get wrecked or like a freakazoid would kind of like, bully into it and kind of get sure. One, and he would get one or two, and it was, so he has that in him, and he just needs somebody to really knife him into having a set of balls to do it, because he could do it. And I kept the knee in his back, man. That's what I did for him. So I would work on, like, he had a majority of that in him. He just needed my strength, I think, behind him, and my confidence. I mean, you can tell in this interview, I thought, like, even doing it, like, I'm going to look back and I'm like, dude, I swore so much. Oh my goodness. You know what I mean? Like, my wife says, just be myself, and this is me. And behind those kids, I was tough, and I gave them my strength, and that's why they played well when I was there. Okay.
So another player I want to talk about is adreN. So obviously he is someone where, despite not being someone who followed Source, I've done a little bit of research over my time, and I'm aware he's considered like one of the better leaders at the end of Source, and he played with a number of very good teams and very good players, and so he has an established rep, at least among NA players, which I think, again, also he kind of carried on even when perhaps as a player he didn't seem as good, or he wasn't maybe the best in-game leader. He was just one of those kind of like standard in-game leaders, who could do the basic things. So your time coaching was the time when adreN was still in this team and was still in control of the team in theory. How would you evaluate him? Leaving aside all the memes and all the jokes and however much hyperbole I might have put on him being a bad player, what was he actually like as a leader? What was strengths? What was weaknesses?
So first, I think you need to appreciate why he was so good in Source. Now, I don't know of his leadership in Source. I just know who he played with. One was Volcano. I mean, he's like one of the best players to ever play in North American Counter-Strike, right? And he had some of the other really tenured Source players, and he was one of them. So I think he had such a system where people were just like a bunch of Garrets, you know what I mean, where they just had on autopilot that didn't require a ton of work. I think he had Pex, who was an in-game leader too, if I'm right. So when he said I in-game led the team, I feel like he kind of did like soft in-game leading. Like he would call when he needed to, but he really had some serious autopilots, I perceive, under it. And I'm making this up, okay? But I because later watching him so if you remember, he never planned to be on this team with the Liquid. And he felt that way. And then he was like, yeah, I'm going to join this team. And then he got stuck in-game leading. He was like, what is this shit? I'm supposed to come in here frag, and now I got in-game lead. I don't want to do this. So he was begrudgingly doing it the entire time. And I think he kind of got swooped in. He quit his job, and he lives, by the way, 2 blocks from me. Okay, or maybe 6 blocks. So he begrudgingly came into it, and he quit his job, and he just slowly became this thing where he was really focusing on it, and he had to lead, to be on the team, kind of thing, and I think he was so far cerebrally above the people that he was playing with. Like, he was playing with Nitro, who had like very limited amount of invite experience, and EliGE, I mean, he had like none,
Yes.
And Flowsick was the most experienced player on the team, and he was not very good. So I forget the other person on the team. Who am I missing on this? It was one other person. Bottom line is, he didn't have much to work with, and he was severely burdened with trying to teach these kids how to play.
I think it was
the
Fugly,
game.
wasn't it?
Yeah, and Fugly was probably the second most experienced player behind Flowsick, but he was like, he was really green. I mean, he still like has a lot of work to do. And he was anyway. So what happened was, he just had it was like a seasoned veteran and 4 newbies is really what I thought of the team. And he could kind of use Flowsick as his one guy to go off and do things. So he's completely buried. He was, half the time he was talking when I was watching them play, because that's the first thing I'm going to do is, how are they playing, is he would just sit there and like talk to them the whole time. Like, he wasn't even playing, he was coaching and then maybe clicking mouse 1. So he was so buried. So my first goal, and then you guys are wrecking him, and I'm like, fuck you guys. If you knew what he was actually doing and having to deal with, you would understand how green these kids are and how much required leadership that they are taking to even get to what the results that they were even kind of having. He was so buried that my goal was to get him unburied. So that's where the moment to build EliGE and build Nitro and build Fugly, it was really starting slowly to build, and then it snowballed to us doing pretty good. I think I can't even remember the whole run, but that so to give you more meat on that answer, he was calling beginning strats like a Sean Garris would. Hey, let's go do the XYZ thing, and he'd have these carbon copy, like predetermined things that were not dynamic. And then he would try to move the chess pieces while he was playing, which made him really poor, in my opinion, because he was having difficulty compartmentalizing stop and go, play and talk. And that's what he had no boundary for. Like, when I talk about Hiko having great boundaries for what he will and won't do, adreN would have done anything to win, and he would have sacrificed himself. And so I saw I was like, oh my God, this is like an old me, like a younger me. How do I help him? How do I save him from all my mistakes that I made? And that's where I was like, fuck you guys, because I'm gonna make this guy better, because he's me, and I get to make myself better and redo it through adreN. Was what it was to me.
Okay. So someone we've referenced multiple times already is Hiko, obviously, and really him coming to Team Liquid was like the big change that turned the franchise around. Because this is where I'll have to give people a little bit of background, because you have to remember, even though to me and you that's only like 2.5 years ago, that's a long time to some people. Okay, so what people have to understand is Team Liquid is a team that initially their name value comes from other games. It comes from StarCraft 2 and it comes from other games, Dota 2, etc. But when they picked up the team that was basically Denial before, it was a team that, reasonably was maybe like the 5th or 6th best NA team. We're not talking about forget the world, or just NA team. So initially, they slapped the Team Liquid banner over a team that's not actually as good as the name value, basically. And then, yes, later on, you get in, first of all, you build up talents. You get your EliGEs and Nitros come through and become very good players. But later on, obviously, you get a Simple, which is kind of like a once-in-a-generation type move that you could even have someone like that in an NA team. But okay, you get him, and then ever since then, we know the moves they've done since then, and they've had a lot of high-profile signings, and especially when Steve Arneset came on, he was willing to kind of make big high-profile signings, etc. So all these other things since then, it's easy to look at them and say, right, these are the things that changed it. But one of the reasons why Hiko joining was a really big move is the whole reason why Hiko ever left Cloud9, and why me and him had that whole semi-meme, but kind of like a philosophy of like Hiko was right type movement, was because what happened was Hiko took stock of where he was and where Cloud9 was. And Cloud9, funnily enough, was kind of like where Team Liquid today is. They were a pretty good NA team. And, they always had potential to do something internationally, but they stagnated. They couldn't get beyond a certain level, and they were never going to win like a major. They were never going to win some massive tournament. And if anything, they were going backwards a bit, and they were stuck with the same talent. And it's like, on paper, these players are good. So who do we cut? And then who do we recruit? Because you have to take a chance on a young guy. So what the whole philosophy of Hiko leaving Cloud9 is wherever I go now, the objective is, yes, to one day try and win a major, which is the ridiculous, number one goal. But the goals along the way are, I've got to try and find a team where I can have say in who's on the team. And then the secret there is, my mechanism is going to be, as I join a team and I play with people, I'm going to try to weed out who the ones that don't work are. Like, either they've got skill, but they won't apply themselves, or they're too stubborn and they just won't do what they need in the team. Or even worse, and this is a problem I think Team Liquid had a lot, they have players who they don't have like a killer instinct, They're like, oh, yeah, I'm kind of good, and, if we do well, I guess that's cool, but, oh, it was close, we lost like 16-13, and that's obviously exactly, if you're someone like Hiko, who you're thinking this is going to be your last chance, you want to go out on top, that's the last kind of person you want to play with. So I have to say, even though that all sounds great, because that is like, he was like a motivating factor, and he's a guy who's pushing to kind of refine the weaker elements of the team and make the team better. There's good elements to that, but I will say, as people might be able to tell by some of your answers in the interview, he also, to do that, was quite ruthless. Like, he would even play political games within the team of like, well, I don't want to be seen as the bad guy because I want to be on this team still. So if I want to get these two people to confront each other, I've got to kind of, prod one guy and then tell the other, it's almost like something out of Game of Thrones, set up a meeting that they then have a confrontation. And obviously when he has people like you, who's around the team and has kind of a contentious relationship with some people, and then especially when he has Simple, who, that's like a rocket, you just aim at someone, and then, he has all these ways that he can make the next evolution of the team, as it were, come along. And listen, as much as people might not like some of the things that happen, etc., the results speak for themselves, these major runs, these big fun. So at least at times the philosophy worked. So how would you describe, as a coach of Hiko, not just as a friend, what was it like coaching Hiko in that respect? Because I know that while he was trying to do all this stuff himself, he was also in kind of crossroads with his game. I mean, he even admitted later, maybe he did just bait too much. Maybe he did go like the happy route, and take lurking to the limits of what that concept can contain. So how do you describe the Team Liquid era with Hiko?
So first, I think it's important to say, even with that, your relationship with him and your presence in the scene is a direct influence on Hiko. Okay, so you have a lot of influence on teams, and I think it's important to note that so that you can be okay with your own power of your ability to rip through groups. Okay, because I have been at majors where I have seen Frenchies beg to you for their validation. Like, they're just like, please love me. Smiths is like, please love me, Thorin, and you're like, fuck off, like, you're shit. So like, I think people, you have to first appreciate that to understand coaching Hiko and understanding the dynamic, because anything that you said, I'd have to argue against. And I don't, did he ever tell you, like, oh, James says this? Did you ever have that? Because I certainly
lots
heard.
Of conversations, sure.
Okay, I was just curious. Because I always thought, like, it was, so that's how compartmentalized Hiko can be, where he has Thorin in his ear, fucking wrecking James, and then he's best friends with James. I'm like, dude, at any time, you can tell Thorin I'm not a piece of shit, and I'm like really smart, and that's why you keep me around and fix this, but nah, you like watching me get roasted for months. So, yeah, anyway, so coaching him came on, and he was rusty as shit. Really, really rusty. So I viewed it as him coming back just like we did 3 years ago, and he did great. And he got a lot of the places he wanted to get, and he, everything was good. He embraced as much as he could adreN. He didn't have to in-game lead, and he just came in, and what he added to the team was a level of professionalism and a conduit. I could not have done the majority of what I did with Liquid without Hiko's without his credibility to EliGE and Nitro, and basically he was just straight, I'm going to use the word again, conduit of anything I wanted to do. He was just like, yep, we're doing that. And he just enabled me to be as effective as I possibly could. So he is an incredible player to have on a team. And first of all, look what happened to Optic. And because I like the owner, so I don't want to like say like go at their brand. Sure. You know what I mean? Yeah. But just look at the players' mistake of not keeping him is just look at what they went through. I mean, maybe they might be okay afterwards, but man, Rush and those kids thinking they're better than Hiko is so messed up. Like, yeah, he wasn't at his form. Yeah, he didn't get set up right. Yeah, they didn't play amazing. But I have a really interesting theory I'd like to talk about after about sure. DApps. We'll pause that with the Hiko thing. I think it's really cool. So I think that in-game leaders, change agents, true people, I think DApps is one of them. And I don't think he's great at the game, but man, he really tries. And I think he's pretty smart. And I think he understands the fundamentals. And he goes into a team and he does good things. And if the people, light up around him, good things happen. And he can get you pretty far. I mean, he's the one that built Liquid's team before I came to it, before he got cut, So he did it, but he got a team there. And then he's done it a couple, he did it with Optic. Yep. And so he's like an Alex Smith for the 49ers. He's not exciting. He gets you where you got to go. And he just does everything by the book. And he's just, but everything kind of goes well. And then you're like, you get a little ego, and the kids like Rush and the rest of these kids, if they ever watch this is the answer to why they had problems and how they can fix them. They're like, let's get rid of Rush or DApps, and let's get like another great player. And then boom, they had those runs. Yes. And then Stanislaw is like, I did this. This is wonderful. I did that. This is me. I was the in-game leader. I did that. No, you really carried on what DApps did, and you took your embodiment of what he did, and you added a little bit of sprinkling on that, and then you had, I think it was Tarek, and then you had a great run, right? Yeah. So if you look at it, the same thing happened with Pronax and Fnatic. That actually helped us beat them. So Pronax is here. They get a little ego. They're like, oh, we don't need Pronax. And they get rid of them. They get who they get? Dennis. And then boom, 5 tournaments in a row.
6 tournaments, yeah.
6 tournaments in a row. Because they had, and I have this program called Playerbase. It's a company I have a small percentage ownership in, and it's going to take over. It allows me to watch videos, like I can watch so many demos on AVI format on a phone. I can say, this is why we did so well at the major. Give me top 20 pistol rounds of Fnatic, and I'm watching this thing, and I'm watching the last 2.5 to 3 months of before Pronax was there, and it digressed, or like after Dennis, then it went to Pronax and went to Old Time, and I'm watching him on Cobble and Dust 2, and I'm watching the strategy that they had on this team and how effective and knifing and concise they were. And then with Dennis, they were just a little more sloppy, a little more. And then at the very current Fnatic, the one we beat at the time, they were so much of a shadow of their former selves strategically, but they were kind of going through the motions of what Pronax had taught them. So they ran out of the steam that Pronax had created through that thing. So that's what happened with DApps, and that's what happened with Optic. And I had a point of why that was happening with Hiko, but because those kids just brought Hiko in there, and that team. I was like, Spencer, you don't want to join that team. They're already going down. That's already dead. You don't want to be a part of that. It's just not going to get any better because they don't have any change agents or thought leaders. And I don't think Stanislaw can actually. Well, he was replacing him, so I don't think that it's going to go. And I would question. And I challenge Stanislaw to see if he's going to be able to do that for Liquid, because, I mean, he's done some of it. And I actually feel like I was one of those. I was like, throw my ego in here. I think I was that for Liquid. And then I think that Peacemaker being a full-time coach, having all of the resources and infrastructure that I built with the players, simple and everything, and you replace, JDM at the time was a better player than adreN in some capacity.
Sure, yes.
adreN adds for leadership, So you add that, and then boom, they go even further than what we did. But then they never, everything fell apart after that. And now with Zeus, who I question Hiko, hey, am I better than Peacemaker? I don't know. Am I better than Zeus? How am I? Because you play with both of them. Where do I fit, bro? Am I the best? So he's told me their styles, and if you look at where Liquid was, I got them, and Peacemaker maintained it, got them to, top 8, right? Or to keep your, legend spot.
Sure, yeah.
And now they haven't been at their legend spot. They lost their legend spot, and then they didn't make the major. So I don't know. I'm going to say that Zeus has a lot of work to do, and that could be some simple, but also, he should at least be able to maintain a major spot and make a major with the quality of talent that they have on that team. So it's a little shot across the bow for fun. You know what I mean?
Sure, yeah.
So anyway, the last part of that would be on Hiko. This coming around full circle of him being a player. I think that for Hiko, he was a great teammate. Then when we lost adreN, so you ate him up. I want you to know that. You beat the hell out of him with get rid of adreN. Like you beat the shit out of him. Yeah, get rid of adreN, get rid of this guy. And every day picking on him, and you're just wearing on him as somebody that's super experienced and knowledgeable. And he's got Thorin on one side, and James no, let's keep him. You know what I mean? Type thing. And then finally he caves, and we're just fuck it. I tried really hard. First we got rid of Fugly. They totally sandbagged Fugly. I disagreed with it. They went against me. I fought. They got rid of him. And then we were going to get rid of adreN at the time, but we didn't. And because we went back and forth. It was going to be Fugly, then adreN. And it was really confusing, and I was fighting a lot of this. So then we ended up keeping adreN, and I'm like, you fucks, we're building something here, and if you guys aren't anywhere where you need to be developmentally, so if we're gonna make a roster change, like Thorin and Richard Lewis keep talking about, we're gonna get the best fucking player we possibly can. Who is that? And he goes we could try Simple. And I'm like, okay, who is that? I watch, I'm like, holy shit, this kid's insane. And I'm like, okay, let's go talk to him. And Spencer's like, okay, I got him from on WhatsApp. And so he put me and Spencer in a WhatsApp with him, and I was like, hey. And he was like, hi. And then I just took it from there and was like, hey, do you want to come to America? And he was like, let me think on it. And he was like, yeah. It was that simple. He was like, yeah, I'll come. And then the fucking meme with him on the airplane, it's one of the best videos ever, coming to America. We all love Simple. So anyway, Hiko was a conduit of that. He recruits talent. He's somebody that he has a lot of charisma. He just knows so many fucking people. He's just really cool to have around. He's cool to hang around. He's a star. He embodies it. He's in Denmark, and we're walking, and some kid comes up to him, and they're like, Hiko, and they just know him fucking anywhere. Anywhere we go, somebody knows who he is, just in the middle of nowhere. And that's a really cool atmosphere that gives him a lot of power on a team, a lot of political clout to do whatever he wants. And he wears that hat nobly, if as best he can. He has let it go to his head before, and he's destroyed teams. He has been a team cancer. I think I added a level to keep him from being a team cancer. So I think he's great. I really pushed him to be, I said, I think you can be an good in-game leader, because we didn't have anybody else to do it. Nitro tried it, and he wouldn't fucking do it, which leads to that comment. If you want to know about it, I can tell you. And then the Hiko thing, I was really training him to be an in-game leader. I was putting him through the ringer, and he bore it. He deserves every bit of what you put on him, as being somebody that guy has a fucking will to win. I respect the shit out of him for I want winners. Hiko, I believe I am one of those people. I feel like we should love each other, in the fact that I love that you're so tough, and I feel like I embody a lot of the values that you hold, maybe a little softer side of it, but Hiko really tried his absolute all to be a world champion, and I'm really glad that he made the finals. I was cheering him on like a school kid. when they were making it with Peacemaker. I was jealous,
Sure, yeah.
And I was happy. I was happy they, you know. But anyway, so yeah, he deserves it. He really tried to solve team problems on all the fighting with Simple and everybody, and Simple was, you know, Simple is not bad on the knifing thing. People say like, oh, he's so cutting, he says such mean things. No, those fucking kids are weak as shit. EliGE and Nitro were so weak, and
okay, so let me ask about this then. Let me craft a question for you, okay? Which is that when you get Simple in this scenario, that's basically the opposite to the first half of the interview where we're talking about in GB, where you're having to get these like young people who are like, you know, some of them have some talent, but it's more like, you know, we've got to teach them the game and stuff. The bizarre thing about Simple is like, excluding team components, just as an individual, like if there was no such thing as team Counter-Strike, if really what they did at the Valve Majors, right, was they just took like the equivalent of FPL and that was the match, you just got randomly loaded into a team, I think he'd already be like the best player you could ever get, because like the guy just as an individual player is ridiculous. Like his all-round ability, it's bonkers.
It's insane.
So the skill level is like, you know, maxed out. But the problem is, I don't know that I've ever, in any esports game, in especially a team one particularly, because in 1v1 games maybe you could get away with it. In a team game, I've never seen anyone with that level of talent, and just like, if the skill is at max, then the like social component is at 0. Like not just at like 20 or 10, like at 0. I'm talking about like, you know, like it's almost like an alien came to Earth and was really good at the game, and he's having to learn like human culture and how to talk to people, you know, really on that side of a level. So the problem I feel like with the Liquid scenario is not only did you have like the ultimate hired gun, but beyond any other aspects, like fuck all the shit about, you know, he was lonely in America and stuff, that could have all played a part. But as you're referencing here, the worst part, which I have to admit, I did know this going in, and one of the reasons why I wanted it to happen is I remember when Hiko was telling me, like early on, oh, there's all these problems with like adreN and with fucking, like even if EliGE doesn't say it, he hates Simple as well. And I said, Hiko, just this is all you got to trust me on, okay? Like we know two things, right? One, we know Simple's really good at the game, so you're going to like that. You're going to love having a guy who's really good because it gives you a chance to win. But here's number two, is it's going to be a nightmare. Like I can tell you, you're going to have all these terrible times, but that's the good thing. Simple is going to be like the fire that burns away all the deadwood, right? He's just going to, they're never going to survive because they're either going to quit or he's going to kill them, basically. You know, it's one of these two. And so I realize it is the most ridiculous example because probably no one can control him at that point in time, and there's no way that group of people could ever really have like been a happy family, you know? But what was it like on the inside? Because this has to be like I always think if they could have, you know, back in the day, they didn't have what they do now where they have all these reality TV series for League of Legends teams and stuff. If you could have ever made one about that team, it would be like the most viewed of all time, right? It'd be fucking unreal.
Oh, I mean, I have, because I had to record I'd have to ask them permission. I wouldn't just do it. But I've recorded so many of our practices. I have so... Yeah,
you showed me a few, and they were fucking wild, right?
Yeah. I don't even know if I showed you all the best ones.
Okay.
But yeah, I let Thorin...
So what was coaching Simple like then, in Team Liquid?
Yeah, like the real shit of what it was like to deal and hear and play. And yeah, I have a ton of them. So, but anyway, so what was the question with Simple? What was it like with him, and what was it like a team?
Because like I'm trying to set up the context that it's not just, you can't only think about Simple, right? It's Simple and who are his teammates, and he's contrasted almost with the worst type of personality to mix with him.
Yeah, I think the first thing to appreciate with Sasha is that he comes from a culture that he beats the shit out of you, and then you're his family, okay? Like, because he tests you, right? Because he doesn't trust you, so he wants to know if he's gonna. It's like abusive relationship. It's like if you got there and he punched you in the face like 6 times, and if you still like want to be his friend, then okay, you know, we could be friends. You know what I mean? Like it was one of those. So I'm gritty. So I love him to death, and I think we're still good friends. I don't talk to him much because I've been so busy, but he is he's a great person, and everybody loves being around him, typically in just hanging out. I mean, he's like one of the coolest people. Everybody likes hanging out with him, okay? So that juxtaposition of being in a server where he's telling you, fuck off. You're being shit. Don't do XYZ. And then he literally does XYZ. And he's basically saying, look, I'm fucking amazing, which he is. You can't do these things, but I get to do them because I'm better than you. So you just need to suck it up and be my bitch, basically, is what he says.
Sure.
In a nutshell. And EliGE and Nitro were like, bro, I was you like a couple months ago. I was the star, and I gotta watch you do the same shit that you're horribly hypocritical at, and now I just have to succumb to your abuse of when you complain that I'm 5 minutes late to practice and you show up like 5 hours late and you sleep in and the managers have to like pull you out of bed begging you, and we hear it in the background. And he's like, no, I don't want to get up. You know what I mean? And we're all in the server waiting, and you're just like, are you fucking serious? And he's like, no, I stayed up too late playing FPL. I was gambling. Like, and you're just like, Jesus. So and then when you're late the next day, he is furious and he will pick on you, and you're just like, is this guy fucking real? Is this real? Yeah. And the whole time I'm just like, kids, this is the best player you're ever going to play with. Shut the hell up. Just treat him like he is just a little bit off, okay? Treat him not like a normal person. Just treat him like he's just, and then when you compartmentalize it like that, where you just get this amazing, let's use the word alien, okay? Alien from outer space came down, and he's playing amazing Counter-Strike, and he landed over in the Ukraine, and you got him to come to America and play with you. Just let him just be himself, and just don't take what he says to heart. Like, pretend it's just something else. So I was just constantly trying to create the barriers of that for the kids to understand, and they would just take it all to heart. And EliGE, in my opinion, from what Hiko says and from what I know who he was beforehand, he used to punish people. He would just be like, nope, I'm not going to play. I remember we were winning like 15-2 in a match that was important. And he just like went AFK in the 15th round because he was upset. He's like, no, I'm not gonna shoot anything. I'm just gonna go AFK because he was upset. So his way is the opposite of simple. He shuts down. So, and he punishes you because he's so smart. EliGE is everything that you would hope a young budding star would be, minus the weakness of, because he's a really nice kid. When I say nice, or when I say weak, I'm being really tough. And what I mean to say on weak is he is a nice person who expects, with a little bit of selfishness, like, who expects to be treated the way he wants to be treated, and he'll treat you the same way. And the moment you don't live up to that, he shuts down. Like it's like a wisp of wind, and you do anything and you just completely shut. And he's like, what's the point? Who cares? It's never going to change. It's like, and you're just like, come on, man, have a little bit more fortitude than that. And so that's what happened. He became the simple when simple left. He became like in the very beginning when he came to the team, when Nitro was there, he was like, no, I want all my spots. And I remember the whole time Nitro was like, I want to kick this kid from my team. I hate him. He took all my spots, man. That's why I'm not playing good. He took all my spots. So anyway, there was all this infighting, and it was, what I was doing is I was trying to take talented people and put a pressure cooker, and I felt like there was some type of animal that was being boiled in a pot, and I was holding it down, and I could barely do it, and it was simple. It was like crazy, and it was ferocious, and it wanted to explode. And I felt like I was using everything in my power to keep it from exploding every day. And Hiko, why I said he's a champ, is he did everything in his power. The only reason why Simple left, here's the real story why Simple left. Simple messaged Hiko, and I'm not going to turn this against him too much. He didn't beg Simple to stay. He played cool guy like he always does. And Hiko was like, no, I'm not coming back from Sweden or wherever we were, or he went home in Ukraine. He's like, I'm not coming back. And then if Hiko would have begged him and be like, bro, please come back. I need you. We'll kick everybody else. Just let us have this team. I love you. He would have come back 100%. But Hiko, cool guyed him. He's like, oh, whatever. Do what you got to do, man. And then it was like, and I remember reading the WhatsApp message, and I was like, fuck, he's not going to come back. No. And then I was like, come on, I was trying to convince him. And then I realized that, like, I just didn't, there were so many other factors that were against it. And that's how I got kicked, like not re-signed. It was because I was like, you kids need to play with Simple because he's the best player you're ever going to play with. Shut up and deal with it. And then I remember, because I was rooming with EliGE at the time, and I remember talking to Nitro and telling him this, and then EliGE was like, I came back into the room and I was like, this was in Sweden after we lost to
Tyloo or something, I think, wasn't it?
Tyloo, yeah. It was embarrassing when they were just coming up, and we should not have lost to them for so many reasons, and it was all because of Simple, I would say, and Koosta. And like for a couple of, anyway, what happened was I sat down on the bed, the opposite one of EliGE, and he looked at me and I said, yeah, I was talking to Nitro about, keeping Simple, and I really think it's the right move. And I saw his facial reactions. He tried to hide it, and I could just see it on his face, like, that's not what I wanted to hear, and I'm gonna fucking get rid of you. Like, I'm not, like, we were friends. I feel like there was a real mentor-mentee relationship. I really like him. When I'm mean, I call him weak. It's just because I see that he is, like, he could have such strength. You know what I mean? He's just young, and so, yeah, that's what happened, is I cut it from both sides. I was like, yo, y'all need to pay me like twice, 2.5 times what you're paying me to do what I'm doing, because I deserve it. And if you want to keep me around, and I'll even take, like, I was fronting like that, but I would have even taken like half of what some of the other people were doing, and I was beating them repeatedly. And I'm like, you gotta meet me halfway, man. I'm putting in the time. And they wouldn't. They tried to strong arm me. And then I cut out, the other side where the players, I'm like, yeah, you gotta keep the best player in the world. And they're like, we don't want him. So I burned it from both ends. And then I'm sitting here, and then Liquid literally falls off the fucking face of the earth, and they lose like 30% or 40% like of their games, like in a row, just like loss. And I'm like, should have paid me, bitches, and you should have kept Simple. You know what I mean? Because I was right, and they should have. I didn't want to be right. I just wanted them to win, and they wouldn't listen. So that's that story. But Simple was great. As far as staying on topic, Jesus. Simple was he was one of the best players I've ever seen play the game. And I think that the problem that he's having now is that the same thing with Zeus. Remember that thing with Pronax and Daps? I forgot, yeah. Zeus, right? So Zeus did it. They left Fnatic, Na'Vi, and the same thing, the same cycle happened again with them. And now they're essentially an Optic where they're trying to figure their way. Do you know what I mean? With the same thing. So I think it really did a full circle where people have to appreciate their change agents and their in-game leaders. One of the few teams that have still maintained theirs is I think he's the smartest person in the world in Counter-Strike. Flipside, Blade.
Blade. Okay.
So yeah, he's fucking brilliant. So hey, I'll tell you something fun for when you watch his demos.
Okay.
Blade knows the highest high end of the game. Like, he knows how to shimmy you out of a spot where he does a ghost on one end and then takes and capitalizes. Like, I'll give you an example. This is what I was teaching some of the people. So, fun pro tip. Why you ghost on a side of a map, why people spread out in defaults, is because you do it so that you create there could be 5, there could be 1 here, and you could just 5-man go or do 1, you're baiting nades. But the other reason why you ghost and you shadow and you leave it, and they're like, I don't know if he's still here or not, is you're buying time for when you actually attack a site and plant the bomb. So that 4 seconds when you're doing the bomb plant, and you have the guy essentially vulnerable, and everybody is maybe not ready to even set up for the bomb plant to protect him, you cover that with the ghosting. And so Blade is such an artist at that, where you don't really, if you don't truly know the nuances of Counter-Strike and see it, he cultivates that type of shadow game and really drains all your utility to a level that I have rarely seen in Counter-Strike. But the problem is, I don't know if you remember that the major, like a couple of times ago, they lost in like quadruple overtime on Cobble.
Yes.
Do you remember that?
Mouse sports game, yeah.
Yeah. All he had to fucking do, he was up 14 or something to 2. All he had to do is walk 5 out the Cobble, like off the ramp. Do you know what I mean? Like, play would be amazing if he stopped trying to fucking scream at his teammates and be like, I can't believe you didn't do the 9 smokes and the shimmy. And like, bro, yeah, you're brilliant, but you don't need to do that shit. Sometimes you just need to walk out, fucking contact and trade. You know what I mean? So like, there's a free tip to make the next 10 fucking majors, Blade. If you add that in your game, there you go.
Okay.
That's
so, to ask a question about EliGE, which you've already touched on quite a lot here, I would just put it like this. One of the most interesting things to me about that Team Liquid team is people will think when we're mentioning these big overarching storylines of like, where was Hiko in his career and what was he doing politically, they'll think that that's all like, we're just imagining that because it's a cool storyline. But you really do. There's like a famous quote, that says like that your character is your destiny. It's the idea that like who you are as a person and the sort of choices you make will ultimately decide where you end up and what happens to you, which sounds like a really kind of like a new age way of thinking. But I think if you look at people's careers in sports and in competitive disciplines, it really does bear out. So when I look at that Team Liquid team, the hot take when it all blew up was like, right, James doesn't know what he's doing as a coach. Simple's purely toxic, so even if he's good, they had to kick him. And, like the others needed like a different direction or something. But you see every single player, their storyline has played out based on what happened at that point in that team. So for example, EliGE thought it was all Simple. He thought, right, it's this Simple guy, he's so fucking toxic, like I can't play with someone like that. I've got to have like more quiet people. I've got to have people who let me do what I want to do. But what we eventually found was it's very easy to identify that Simple's being an asshole because he's literally screaming in your face. What people didn't know at the time was EliGE has a different way of acting out, as it were, as you've kind of elucidated here. He has his own ways of fucking with you, and if he's annoyed, how he punishes you, etc. And it's a bit more subtle, and it took longer to play out. And that was he had his own issues with Hiko later on, etc. So when you look back now, was there actually ever any way to like perfectly navigate all these difficult scenarios in the team? Because maybe other teams have some of these issues, but it feels like this team had every issue at once and at the same, simultaneously.
Yeah. They just needed to shut up and let me do my job. So what happened was, and what happened was there was, I still like him. I think he's a good person. Robin Nyman was a manager who did everything for Liquid. He was a true soldier to build Liquid's brand. He was with Nazgul for 5 years, okay? And he was a slave to them. I totally admire his grit in trying to do his job. And I think that he kind of liked Counter-Strike, and he was making his way up the ranks. He was always doing the kind of the menial jobs and some heavy jobs. And then he got wrapped into getting excited about this team as it started getting better. And he was like, I'm gonna do stuff. And then he started like hanging out in our channel in like TeamSpeak or whatever, and he started critiquing me and like, kind of, and he was essentially my boss, and he was just there, and he's like, I don't know if you should swear that much, and I don't know if you should do this, and I really think you should talk to this guy this way. And I'm just like, bro, get the fuck out of here. Like, what? Get away from me. And then he just came in and he started I started hearing, he's like, yeah, I'm going to start traveling to all the team needs a manager, which I agree they do. And I'm going to travel to all the tournaments. And I'm like, this fucking guy is trying to vie for power. And then he started he's like, I'm going to renegotiate contract. And I was like, bro, you're not renegotiating my contract. If I talk to decision makers only, you're not going to give me a fixed percentage. I'm going to talk to Steve only, or Nazgul. That's it. I'm not going to talk to you about my contract, because he signed Koosta's contract, right? Okay. So it was his first contract he ever signed, and I was like, I was like, you shouldn't talk to him. You should try to talk to the owners, man. Like, you're gonna have a fixed price, because the conversation went, hey, I want this much, you can have this much, but I want this much, you can have this much or nothing at all. Like, that's the contract negotiation went. And he was like, okay. I'm just like, oh Jesus. So, and this guy kept encroaching on me and undermining me, and I was telling, and I told, and I had multiple conversations. I would chalk it up to not Steve. Steve Arnset had barely any touch points at a certain point. It was really me and Nazgul came to like a lot of the lands, so like the majors and stuff. And I'm like, look, bro, you need to pay me more. I'm doing amazing. You don't understand how much. And he would talk to the players, and they fucked themselves because they were just like, nah, he's not doing that much. He's okay. Like it's the understanding that if you have world-class players, or at least pretty good players, that say, oh my God, this coach is the best coach ever. He's just like so smart. He does everything. Then they're fucking plebs. Like, they have no ego of themselves. Like, if you have a good player, like pretty good player, like an EliGE Nitro, and they say, yeah, he's okay. He's pretty good. Like, that guy's fucking amazing. Because usually there's like, there's always something better out there. Get somebody else. Like, they don't know how to read that. And so that it gave me no leverage to actually have a good place with Liquid. And then the Liquid was like strong arming me, and I'm like, can you give me a base? And he goes like, I'm telling him, but the rest of the guys are like not doing it for you. So it really, the inexperience of Liquid of how to have a high pedigree Counter-Strike team and how to have a strong manager and a coach essentially like myself, I think they have totally learned since then. I think they doubled their brand growth when I was part of them. And I think I taught them some. I mean, I think I'm older than them. I'm 36. I don't know how old they are, but I'm a little wiser in some as far as that goes. They're very brilliant people. They're doing great things, by the way. So in this world, I was trying to show them like a champion, what I perceived to be a championship pedigree, at least in a coach, and what we needed to do. And what happened was that Robin Nyman and Nazgul are really close friends, or they were, because he was since fired, I think, from this. And I think this part of it happened because of it, because he came to a point where he was like, no, James isn't doing a good job. And I'm like, and it was really just like, get the fuck away from me. And then he kind of undermined the whole thing and just made a fucking mess of it. That's where, when he tweeted a long time ago, if you remember, you probably don't, but he said something like, oh, it's like really sad. And I'm like, should have fucking let me coach, bro. And then everybody's like, oh, snap, is because that's what that was about. So I think that now Liquid pays out the ass for coaches, and they're trying to get the best coaches. And that's a lot of Steve. So I think that they have a perfect blend. They have Steve Arnset, who's he will do anything he can to win.
Yes. Yeah.
And I love his fire, too much so. He's like you if you were an owner, okay? He's like Petter, okay? He's like you. And then Nazgul's like the softer side of me, and they balance each other out. But Steve Arnset wasn't really, like when we wanted simple, it helped us because he had gotten people like Piglet and stuff. Do you know what I mean? So he really helped foster and create an environment where we could do that. And he started coming in on a lot of the coaching things. Like, I had to get him here. Like, I was like, hey, can you come in and kind of give us like a little extra, like really a show of seniority that what Hiko and myself and what the players want. Because the problem is he was there. He was actually in the house. Do you know what I mean? So like, he saw Simple every day. So we really tagged him in to try to keep the boiling pot. So do I think, yes, if Liquid had fully focused, remember Steve was doing a million things, but if they had added a little bit more infrastructure to focus on him, if they had maybe allowed his girlfriend to come here and kind of cultivated a life for him a little bit, which didn't really work because that's completely counter to everything that they do at the house and the other rules. So they would have to just fucking make up a random rule for Simple, which would have upset, you know what I mean, right? All the other like leagues or teams would be like, why can he have his girlfriend and I can't? Because he's Simple, bro, So that, and I think that's doable. And I think if you get the manager away from me and just let me fucking do what I've been doing, and we would have been fine. We'd have been great. And I think NA would have continued to, I think EliGE would have continued to develop into the player he was. I think Nitro would have really honed his craft as an entry fragger. I think that, Hiko would have totally developed a higher level of in-game leadership. I believe he totally could have done it more. I think we had everything, and I would have been okay with JDM because we needed a player at that point. adreN was done. I had to beg him to come. I was like, hey man, look, we know they shafted you. I think I went over his house. I don't know. I called him. I was like, look, you have to make your brand great again. So all you need to do is just come in. People do not know how much work you put into the game, how much leadership taxes your play. Come in and fucking wreck shit. Don't lead, just play, and let everybody see how good you are. And he did, and he played pretty well. So anyway, do I think it could have done it? Yes, that's why I was so fucking pissed. Because I was like, y'all are fucking up everything I just built. Come on. And I was like, I really enjoyed it.
What would you say about the big result of your time, which was obviously when Liquid made semis of the major and famously, obviously on 2 maps, took the eventual champions to overtime? What would you say about that run?
To appreciate this, I put a fuck ton of work into it. I put about 7 hours per best of 3. So I really liked, you did an interview with the SEAL or the Optic coach kid.
Yeah, I'm a pet.
So funny story with him. He totally, you heard it in there. He sideswiped the shit out of Garrett, didn't he? What do you think of that? He's like, this guy's terrible. Get rid of him. Do you remember? Did you pick that out of it? He stuck a knife so deep into Garrett's back. He's like, hello, I am your analyst. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like,
sure.
I watched the whole video and I was like, fuck this guy. And then I started to like him. So I like you, I'm a pet. I started to see a little bit of his strength, even though he's younger. So I wish him good luck. Try to beat what I did, bro. We'll see if you can do it. I have a little bit more of experience. I really think it's hard. I think it's bullshit when you're trying to be a coach and you never played professionally. I think it's a fucking joke. But there are many arguments to the contrary. So you know what I mean with you guys.
Sure.
So because that's how I always picked on you guys. I was like, you guys never fucking played pro. Fuck out of here. But there are. And when you talked about the game, but you've been around so long that it doesn't matter. That doesn't count. But yeah, there are many, and I got proven wrong on that. There are many coaches, great coaches that never played, and they're just students of the game. So I wish I'm a pet well. But when I lost my train of thought. Where was I going with this?
The major, making top 4 the major.
Oh,
all the effort you were putting into it. 7 hours best of 3.
How much I'm a pet did. I put so much work. So I got lucky that there's these 2 brothers that have this program that is absolutely phenomenal. It is by far, they're slow in making it. They're taking investment. So if investors want to find out about it, it's called Player Base, okay? And it is absolutely amazing. So basically we can pull up, I can say, yo, give me the last 20 pistols of Fnatic versus tier 1 teams on Cobble. Boom. I can get a video in like 5 minutes and I can watch all of it. And I'm not talking about like shitty video, I gotta upload the demo. No, I can look at the video in streaming in real time and look at it and just find the trends. And I can see it from the past history. So I can see everything that works, how many times they do certain styles. Like, I was so prepared for that major. And people are saying like I didn't in-game lead. Bro, we didn't have an in-game leader half the time because adreN didn't do it. If you watch in the background, I don't know if you ever watched me back there, I was nonstop talking. I was like 70% in-game leading to a certain point, and if I didn't in-game lead, I would say, I would constantly ask questions. This gets to that comment that I don't ever actually remember saying it, but I thought I could see, an instance where I would say that. Where I basically would constantly ask the right questions. I'd be like, all right, I would constantly keep the heartbeat. Okay, what's the plan? What's the plan? What are we doing now? Because I always knew, the crux of the times of what we needed to do to ask the questions. So I always knew and they would pick the answer, whatever they were most comfortable with, and I would always suggest things. So specifically to go back real quick on the comment at the major, Nitro was in-game leading at the qualifier for HR, and he was choking like nobody's business. And I've seen choking because I've been in so many majors and so many high pressure situations, or like, you know, CPLs and all that stuff, and taking so many young kids. I knew exactly what was happening, and we were losing badly. And EliGE came with some of those most amazing plays. If you remember the one, like with the outside of Dust 2, you remember?
Yes.
So like, but Nitro was choking so hard, and I was trying to get him out of that narrow focus. And feeling the pressure, and which was even worse is we fucking smacked those kids, and then I knew exactly how HR plays their overpass. They throw like back in the day, they threw like 10 smokes over B, right? And they telegraphed exactly what they were doing. It was like 10 smoke strat. I'm trolling because it's 5, but it would land and they would all hit the things and make the wall of smoke so they could like run and plant and then go back behind the wall. And it was like they had 2 strats. And I was like, okay, when they're doing this, they're doing that. And we saw 5 smokes come over the wall. And guess what? We had like 4, if you watch the demo, there's like 4 players there. But what happens is you consume yourself, in the sense that they just had so many extra people that they didn't play right. So the guy that by barrels would be like, oh great, I got 4 people. Let me just peek and spray and die. And then the guy behind thing would like over peek, and then the other people would be in shitty spots. So I would over-coach, over-analyze, get my fucking whole goddamn team there, and then they would shit the bed because they ate the risk, you know, that I gave them, in a sense. Like I gave them extra, you know, I'm gonna go off on a tangent, but like anti-lock brakes. When you installed those, people started driving faster to consume.
Okay, yes.
You get what I'm saying, right? So I gave them extra.
Where, you know, in the NFL, when they added the helmets, people tackle harder and all that sort of shit.
Yeah. So you give them a benefit, but they don't use it properly, essentially, to be safer, in a sense. So I remember I was so pissed. That's what Moses, I think he's told you at one point. I came outside and I lit them up so hard. I threw my fucking food. I turn around. There's Moses smiling at me. I'm like, that fuck. Do you know what I mean? Like, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
I'm just destroying them. I'm like, I fucking work so hard for you shitty kids. I fucking watched 7 hours of demos where you're out there like just watching. All you had to fucking do, you had to use a whole goddamn team here to shoot these kids, and you can't do it. Like, wake the fuck up. And then we go back in and we start losing again. And I'm just like, okay, Jesus. So I started saying things like, it was one of my finest moments in coaching, for sure, ever, as an in-game leader, ever. It was one, because it was a culmination of everything I've ever done. I just kept saying, yo, Nitro, what would be fun, man? Like, what's the, like, I remember the exact, it was like 14-4 or something. I was like, what would be fun? Like, what's like the fucking scrimmiest, online, stupid, shittiest strat we would do? What's one that would just, like, swag on them? Like, and he was like, we'd rush out long. I was like, do it. And he was like, all right, rush out long. And then, like, they did it, and they just wrecked everybody. So we made that major comeback because I just kept saying it. So if I said, which I don't think I said, get your dick hard, you know, or do something, make a play that gets your dick hard, it was implying what I perceive as fucking brilliance of trying to stop the curve of just saying dumb shit to get them to loosen the fuck up so that they would shoot shit and stop being cowards. That's what it was about.
Okay.
Anyway, so about the major, all that time watching these demos, I'll give you an example of my impact. JDM has a heat map, and he plays in 2 fucking places. He likes on cash, he likes checkers, and he likes this weird thing where he doesn't like the peak A main. He likes to just fucking pleb and go back behind the fucking quad boxes and sit there. And I think it's dumb as shit, but it catches people off guard because they're like, oh, I guess there's no op here because they didn't put any pressure on the A main to peek us early and then fall back. And then he catches people off guard because when he goes there, people are like, ah, shit, he has an op there. I didn't know he bought an op. And then he catches people off guard. So I remember we purposely beat them made the run back on CLG because of this. I was like, okay, he's going to be in checkers, so let's just avoid him. Because when you avoid an op and they have to rotate, it's 5v4. So they're like, and especially him, he's going to be fucking useless. So it's like 5v4, let's go this way. And I'm telling him where to go. And then I'm like, okay, guarantee you, I know his ego. I know he's like, I mean, I remember interviewing Cutler to join one of the players to join Liquid. And Cutler was like, yeah, man, that guy just makes us train him ops. Like, he just fucking forces us to give him ops. I don't want to give him ops. He's just making us give him ops. So which is why I don't totally credit him as a world-class player, because you have to feed him so much money to get the kills that he gets, you know? So I'm just like, I know this guy thinks he's hot shit. You know, he's a big muscle guy. And he's like, he's going to be in his other fucking spot because he's going to be pissed that he didn't get into the game. He's going to be like, fuck it, I'm going to end this shit. I'm going to be in quad. So I'm like, yo, simple. I bet you every fucking fiber in my being, this motherfucker is going to be in quad box, and sure as shit. And like, this is the brilliance that I got to play around with. He's like, hey, boost me. And then he's like, okay. And then I remember, like, I think it was Nitro or EliGE were just like, okay. And like, I don't even think they truly knew like what he wanted. They like kind of did it because they never fucking did this shit. Maybe an A on the reverse when they jumped the box, right? Yeah. So he was like, boost me. And I was like, okay. And he just fucking does this phenomenal jump over the thing. And then he inches out and fucking picks JDM. And JDM was probably sitting there like, the fuck? You know? Like, that opened the game. So that's the type of coaching I do. That's the type of, that's where my ego comes from. That's the amount of energy I put into that shit. Anyway, that's it. That's me.
Okay. So earlier on, you alluded to, so I want to get a little bit more detail. When you were talking about the concept of getting a player who's been kind of like trained up the right way and understands how he's going to play the game, and then you work with him. Now, the example you gave, and you said it was your biggest disappointment in gaming as a coach, as a leader, or anything, was the time that you had Koosta on Team Liquid. And to give people a bit of context, the reason why it was so shocking that Koosta was so bad in Team Liquid is because when he was coming up through the lower levels of the scene, and he was in this team, NME, which was the team that basically later became Selfless under Ryu, etc., he looked like the most surefire, like sort of rookie sensation you could have. You watched the guy when he played in that minor, etc. He looked like well-rounded. He seemed to have like great game sense. He was an AWPer, but he knew where to pull his AWP shots from. It wasn't like, like famously, if Simple peeks an angle, he can just peek the angle, and it's like he might not even be pre-aiming the right area, and he just snaps across the screen and kills the guy. Koosta was like, no, he'd peek the angle, the guy would be where he was thinking, he'd hit him. And so you'd think to yourself, right, wow, this is a guy who, it's going to be perfect if we put him on a better team. He's going to be even better. But actually, what you found was, it's like that guy never arrived at Team Liquid. Someone else did, and then history just changed. So what was the issue with Koosta for you?
Well, first, when I interviewed him and when I reviewed his demos, the thing that I liked the most was his pistols. I remember this one round where he got smoked out at quad box, like exactly where JDM would have played, and he had an up, and he had a Tech 9, because I guess he picked it up, and he was CT, and they did this front load smoke, where they go and plant the walls, and he, right click flashed through it, and then went up and Tech 9 two people and faded back through the smoke. And I was like, holy shit, that's like next level stuff. To be a great opper, in my opinion, you have to be two things first. Opping and being good at it is a fucking given. To be great at pistols is the mark of a true opper, because half the time you don't even get to fucking use the op. Yeah. So you have to be phenomenal at pistols. And the best person that I've ever seen at pistols was either fRoD with a Deagle or K-Sharp with a USP. My fucking God, he was amazing. K-Sharp with a USP. And so with that said, I was like, oh, he's got the trait that I'm looking for. And then I was like, okay, but you got to work on your smokes and flashes, because that's the other thing of why fRoD was one of the best oppers, in my opinion. He had such a tenure, such a responsibility to be a great flasher and a great smoke artist. And I don't think anybody could ever take that away from him. And I think he sets a bar high for what world-class oppers do. All these kids running around thinking they're great with a gun. No, you got to be great with a pistol and smokes first, because you are typically leading long distances and then switching and then becoming a supporter of your team. And then half the time you don't even get to use the gun. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Especially we don't have quick scopes as much. So that's why I got tricked. And And then when I got them, what happened was it really culminated in Sweden, because that's where we went, and we had just done well. And I wasn't even so to be clear, there's a little like, selflessness of me, dumb of me. I remember it was like, Spencer, bro, I'm not under contract. I don't want to go to this thing. I could strong arm the shit out of Liquid and just be like, nope, not going. And then you guys are going to fail because of what was going to happen. I could see was going to happen because of how much I was holding the team up. And I was like, I want paid, and I wasn't under contract. So, and I was like, and Simple asked me, and he was like, please just come. And I was like, and then he goes like, yeah, I mean, if you do what you got to do, man. He's very compartmentalized. He's like, you should do what's best for you, but I want you to come. And then I was like, fuck it, I'll just handle it afterwards. And I spent so much time grinding for Tai Lu. And Tai Lu, if you care about this, Cobble, they have this, it doesn't make any sense. They have this Cobble setup where like one's fountain and one's in the V nook outside of drop, and then like one's like in drop, and it's like they're like, hello, we don't watch any demos and we don't know how to play this game, so we're going to give you the entire map and then hide behind something where we can get totally pinched. Yeah. So I showed this to them. Simple's like, nah, I don't want to watch any demos. They're shit. And I'm like, just watch this. Just look at the screen. He refused. I remember I brought him the laptop and just pressed pause on the video. I'm like, just look at the fucking triangle, man. Just look at the fucking triangle. And he's like, no, the shit. I'm not looking. And I'm like, this fucking guy, come on, look. And then he wouldn't. And then he was like, I want to go home. And I'm like, oh, Jesus. And then that just sent the rest of the kids emo. And then I got Koosta, and he's just like, yeah, I'm in Sweden. This is my first major land. This is really good. This is really exciting. And he was just along for the ride. And so I was playing like a puppeteer, like keep Simple in line, fucking help Hiko with entry fragging, or not in-game leading.
Yes.
Fucking help Nitro not try to hide like a bitch, and EliGE, keep him in the game and have him not be so angry at Simple for being hypocrite. You know what I mean? And just kind of keep his spirits up, right? Yeah. So I was just doing all this, and then it was all good when I had adreN. And adreN could have been the shittiest player in the world. He just did things and was not a drain on me. And then I got this fucking kid who's just like, which way? Like, he didn't do this, but metaphorically, like, which way do I go? Yeah. Do you want me to op people? And I'm just like, bro, I cannot fucking do all this. And then I had to just make a choice. I'm like, I got to either try to work on Simple and make him do things, and then, or worry about like what is the return of my investment that I'm going to get to focus on the koosta. And I was just like, I'm going to clearly put it in the other people. And I just left him alone. Good luck. And I remember at the point where he was just fucking clueless and he had no motor, and I was like, I want to win. I do not want to lose. So versus Mouse, I think that's when I can't remember. I think we switched the op, because I was just like, I'll just fucking he's not going to do it. I can't control him and everyone else. So I'm just going to fucking switch the op to a kid that can shoot it and has some type of a motor and will call what he's doing. And then while I delegated that, apparently everybody told me, no, Simple was a total asshole and ran out when tried to be a hero, and he lost the game for you. So I don't know what happened. I was too many fires. It was a Garrett situation. Sorry, what was the question on this?
It was just about why was Koosta such a disappointment for you?
Because he doesn't have the work ethic. He doesn't have the drive. He doesn't have the strong communication of his feelings. He's like, it's whatever. I'll do whatever. I'll rifle. You want me to rifle? You want me to op? Bro, what the fuck are you doing not opping when you opt your entire CS career almost? And then he's like, but I used to rifle when I was fucking 5 years old, and like, shut the fuck up. You opt forever, and now you're just going to give it up to just let somebody else opt? Like, where is your sense of identity? And he just didn't have one. And you can see how abrasive I can be and strong and just, and he didn't give me anything to play with to kind of bounce off, to even just punch him and have him give me any type of reaction of any type of semblance of self. So that's why it was just putty, and there was just nothing there. And I can totally flip the script, because you could say, I don't have, I worked amazing with EliGE, and I really liked him. And so I kind of mold myself to each person if they need stronger touch. If, like Simple needs me to punch him in the fucking face because he's so strong-willed that I'm going to show him that I'm just as tough as him, but I'm going to work and I really care about him, because you can't coach people and be like this unless they know that you care about them as people first. And I made sure I did that with everybody. But with Kenny, I just couldn't none of my things worked. Nothing worked. I've been doing it for a decade and nothing worked. And I just, at that point, it's his fault. You know what I mean? Like so many other people I've helped, he would not help himself.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
As we've alluded to already, after you came Peacemaker, and that, I mean, he had his own run, but ultimately that didn't really work out. And famously, it's mostly because people within the team didn't like him and didn't agree with his system. And it wasn't really until they got Zeus now that I've ever seen them have a coaching team Liquid that they've never either like passive aggressively badmouthed or just openly badmouthed, you know, because I think the key thing with Zeus is, first of all, they're at their lowest at the moment, you know, they haven't had the results, so they can't be as egotistical as they were when they'd made top 4 and finals of a major and all that sort of stuff. But more so than that, if you want to talk about credibility, if the coach can say, well, I won 2 majors, how many of you guys won? That's a pretty good base to come from. So I always thought
you lose that argument, right?
Yeah, you've got to, if you have that in your back pocket, that'll help certainly, you know. So do you feel as though that core, I realize not much of it exists now, was there a degree to which they were kind of like uncoachable? Like it feels like basically unless you are Zeus, they're waiting for the moment they give up on the coach, or they're like, right, yeah, we've got to get rid of him now, and they all downplay what the coaches did. It's not just you, it's Peacemaker as well, you know. Was there some component of that in that team?
Who are the players you're talking about?
I mean, Nitro and EliGE are the only ones that were there the whole time, but you know, Hiko was there for a while, and obviously Simple was in and out of the team, you know.
I think Hiko's the one of the most coachable, people that you can have on a team without losing their identity. So I think he is one of the people that I've had the most success with, and I just think he's a great person on all fronts. So him 100%. EliGE, I mean, this kid's learning Brazil, you know, or what? Portuguese. Portuguese to, you know, play, and he's like a StarCraft pro. He is so smart that he gets in his own way, but you can just remove that from him, and as long as you have good ownership, no, he's great. I mean, he doesn't, you have to figure out a way to talk to him. And a way to talk to him is just understand and give people mirrors of themselves. Like, what are you upset about? And then, well, I don't like this and this. And then you do your best to rectify that, or you tell him to shut the fuck up because he's being a little bitch. Like one of the two, you know what I mean? Like you give him an identity of what that is. And I guess I've been doing it so long that it wasn't that hard. So no, I think he was and still can be great. I just don't know that the coaches that managed him like really had the ability. I gave a lot. He's a great kid. He's a great person. I think he is possibly one of the most kind people in esports. I really do. Like, he's just a great person. EliGE is 100%. And I like, I'd want him as a friend, man. I feel like he would have my back as a friend, and he would just, I think he was raised right. I just think that he just hasn't had a lot of life experience up when I was with him to really, but I think I did a great job with him. And I think that he was great when I was there, as best that he could be in the circumstances of having somebody as difficult to deal with as Simple. He had just never been there before, and with a star mindset, and really embodied a star mindset. He was just young. So with Nitro, he's a little bit uncoachable for a couple of reasons. Number one, he'll backstab anybody that he has. Like, I feel like he'll cut anybody on the team. Very wishy-washy. I think he did it to Hiko. I think he did it to me. I think he was going to do it to EliGE at one point. I think he did it to adreN. Like he was going to go to Cloud9 at one point, and then he didn't. He's just very. I think my constructive criticism to him is to start developing your foundation of your morality of where you are and what you will do. But that's why he survives, because he's kind of malleable to the situation. So that, I mean, I've met a lot of people like that, and I don't have much respect for them. But I do think that at heart, if he can shore up that part of him, I think he is a totally. I mean, I did well with him, right? And I think that he's totally coachable and malleable, almost too much so. So no, I think he's great. If he fixed that one piece of him, to literally let new people know where he stands. Because I'll give you an example. I think you might have seen it in one of the videos. So like, he's just like messaging Hiko. Hiko had to be Daddy Hiko all the time because how frustrating is the back channels of the politics that you have in a team where, again, this is why Hiko was good. Anything the kid said, Hiko gave me a mirror of myself. Hey, EliGE doesn't like that. I fixed it. Nitro doesn't like this. I tried to figure out a way. Do you know what I mean? He really gave me the ability to be an effective coach through the private mirror of the respect that he had of kids talking shit on whoever, on whatever, and then he would basically give it to me to solve, and then I would solve it softly. Do you know what I'm saying? So,
okay.
So I think that his problem was that even when I created an environment, which I did learn how to do that better and better in constructive criticism, like this is half the fucking coaching. People say, oh, X's and O's. Bitch, I kept that team together. I kept people from fighting and killing them each other. I kept them trying repeatedly after like crazy shit that happened. So, and a lot of that was the soft skills of getting people to work together. And I think that his problem that I could never get him to do is he would just always backstab people through conversations. He was just never. I remember there was a situation where I was like, does anyone have anything to say? Nothing. And like, hey, and I would present, hey, there's simple. People do not like it when you do X, Y, Z. They find it hypocritical or whatever, and they really appreciate you know. And he was just so open. He was such a fucking simple, was such a champ. Yeah, just whatever. Tell me who has the problem. Tell me what do you want me to do? And then there would be fucking crickets. EliGE wouldn't say shit. Fucking like adreN would, at the time wouldn't fuck you. Anybody, he was just there or not, he would leave. And then it was just really, and those two kids would just be so quiet. So I hold them fully responsible, or partially responsible for not giving, repeatedly effort, like, because they didn't think it was going to make any difference. Because so. There's like, especially EliGE. Why am I going to tell him how I feel and do any of that work? He doesn't deserve it, and he's not going to do anything anyway because he's crazy, So, like, anyway. So I think that they're all coachable, and I wish them well. I hope Zeus learns and develops himself to continue to grow, and I still will find my place in North American Counter-Strike. I've been in it at the pro level for 11 or so years, and I think that I will have some role on whether it be an org owner, which it should be soon, or a team owner, you know what I mean? Some role where I'm gonna have a place where I imprint all the knowledge that I have and make NA great again. So hopefully I can have a part in that. But I think that those kids are all coachable.
So after Team Liquid, you were involved with Renegades, and this was the era when, I know very intimately because it was my friend who used to own the team, Monte Cristo, when he sold the team to Jonas Skorebko, the Boston Celtics NBA player, who took ownership of the team. Now, you weren't the coach of the team, right? So what was your involvement with Renegades for that period of time? What did you do for them? What were you doing?
I did a lot. I found they wanted to build an org, and I said, look, I can probably help you purchase, this org. So I linked up with Tobias from IMG, who is actually from Pittsburgh. I ended up going to his wedding with Matt Marcoux. If you know him, he's doing the Madden League. Matt invited me as a +1 to the wedding. I remember crashing this wedding, and I'm there, and I'm like sitting next to Sundance and a couple other people. Help me, EliGE's manager right now.
Christina.
No,
Alejandro or something.
The guy. Minzik, and then who's the crazy guy that used to run the SteelSeer, the headphones, and he runs
Kim Rom.
I'll text you a photo of this later.
Ridiculous, isn't it? Yeah.
Okay, so Sundance and Kim Rom. So anyway, I'm at this table and I meet. So that's how I had the relationship with all those guys. And it was just by fluke, but hopefully they're going to help me with some of the projects in Pittsburgh because he's from here and I'm trying to build up the infrastructure. So I got him set up and he helped the deal to purchase it. I heavily negotiated and told them the lay of the land on the terms to purchase the team. I helped craft that. I helped, there was a couple times where, EliGE was saying, you can't have the spots and,
yes,
all that problem. And then it went quiet. And then I really stayed on Gomez to help us negotiate the rights between the owners of Jonas Jerebko and his partner, Chris Romeo, who's a financial manager that supports Chris and Jonas in a lot of his investments. And I brought in staff around me that had been around me from different things that are some just random people that I'd met that I thought might be able to help them to get started. Not too many, just like one or two that I met on another project. I didn't know them too much, but I thought that, just kind of finding people. And then I just worked through everything. I mean, I got them. Leonix, who is my partner now in the business. Hey, Mason, can you go get Leonix just so you can say hello? So anyway, I met him through the exchange of the Twitter accounts and all that other stuff, right? And we were able to, we had to buy the brand to get the players because of the 4 months left they had on their first right of refusal. Yeah. And so we did that, and then I just helped them. And in 1 week, we got jerseys made. I had them buy desks, and I had them buy the right PC equipment, and all kinds of stuff. The full dual monitors, PC for streaming. I went out and got the graphics made, contract. Yeah, just come say hi for a second. Anyway, run quick. Just run in and run out. So this is Leonix. Hello, we're at his center with all of his equipment. All right, get out of here.
Welcome. No, you pushed me off already.
Sorry, no, I'm teasing. It's just because it's been running long. I'll drag him in on some other time. So anyway, Leonix was heavily behind that brand, so we stayed in touch as I was trying to grow it, and I'd always ask him advice because he helped grow. He was one of the main people behind Monty. I don't know if you know who he is, but anyway, so I just helped them grow the whole thing as best I could. And we had some differences of the vision of where we thought it would go. And I decided to sell my equity back and go and focus on the project that I'm doing with the guy that I so rudely pushed away.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So can you give us some insight then? What is GBJame doing now? What does the future hold?
Why don't you join me for this then? Here, grab a chair. Yeah, grab a chair. So I think it's important to know that, come over. I'll move over. So we met during that, and then his family owns a block in Hazelwood, Pennsylvania, where Wiz Khalifa is from, and we just to give people the black and yellow video is actually filmed on the roof of where we are, and some of it, and in the parking lot next door. So bottom line is his family is helping seed fund a lot of the infrastructure that we're doing, and we're growing an esports team. You can see a jersey, Pittsburgh Knights, focused on the archetype of a hero, so the Knights. And we're focusing on that. We're focusing on the studio that you see is going to be called Paragonics, and it's just going to focus on live streaming like a TV show, Twitch, YouTube. I'm going to reach out to them.
I think the best equivalent of that is One Up Studios, but more on non-endemic.
That's where I got the idea from. Yeah. Steve does good things, And then the third part, we have the guy who created Google Hangouts. As a former, he put the rover on Mars, as far as the coding. And he's a senior level coder with Apple and Google and Microsoft, and he is in Pittsburgh, and he's trying to help us develop tech. So that kind of that player-based tech I was talking about to enhance. I don't know exactly. We're just going to problem solve. If we have problems in the studio, people understand. If they have problems with Twitch or if I could just do this, and this, we're just going to scope it out. We're working with Carnegie Mellon University's incubator. We have another incubator as a friend of mine. So and we're gonna be looking to take investment from the Pirates, the Penguins, and the Steelers ownership group. And people know Franco Harris. He's a friend of mine, and we're gonna have a sit down with him and ask him if he'd like to be involved in the project. So that's kind of where it's going. We're looking to enter Counter-Strike first, but as my tenure, shows I can bring a team from like a premier to an invite. We're probably going to do that eventually. So I'm just trying to build the infrastructure around it to make sure that we're not weighed down by teams, so that we can be effective. All the things that I learned when I took Liquid's job for Liquid, part of it was me studying the internal pieces of the organization so that I could model it, because I think they do a good job. And then the whole thing with a year in Renegades, or 9 months, was really from the ground up trying to figure out what that looks like. And then now it's me. And I always had GB, so I always kind of, you know what I mean? Kind of did it. I always put people around me to try to manage things as I was playing, which was really hard. But I've always had a brand that I've been a part of or essentially created. So that's where all my energy is going today. And I really hope it comes back to Counter-Strike. So I hope I can build it so I can really build one of the best teams in North America, because I believe I can do it. And I believe there's a lot of talent that hasn't been coached and put together to create something pretty great. So I think I'm hoping to have a spot in North America by good hard work, and then people see it and they're like, oh, that's James, he's always been around, he'll be a good owner. So that's what I'm hoping for.
Okay, so at the end of the interview, do you have a final message or someone you want to thank or say hello to?
I think first I would say my wife is amazing, because she's the one that pushed me back into esports. I didn't want to come. I was like, you have no idea, I was in it for so long and I didn't want to give it up. And are you sure that I just left for work and I came down here and I have to go back to work tomorrow morning. So I'm working like 110, it's a lot of hours, man, to do all this stuff. Every day I'm taking meetings. And so my wife is fully supportive. I have a 1-year-old. That was the other thing. My wife was pregnant that's kind of where I disappeared too, is I had a baby. So, I thought she gives me so much support, and she's so supportive, and I'm so appreciative that she has the vision to see where esports is going. And I wanted to I really want to thank Liquid for really giving me an opportunity. I talk shit on them a lot, and I gave them a lot of shit when I left. But I really think Steve Arnset and them, they did a great job. Thank you for you guys not beating up on me anymore, taking the time maybe to learn a little bit about me. I like it though. I'm gonna be honest. I'm a little bit of a masochist when it comes to that. I got what I was looking for, if you know what I mean. I wanted to fucking fight. I was a fighter. I'm looking for a fight. So, and I'm really excited to be working with Rob here. So, and the opportunity that his family is giving us to do something really cool. And we're doing, I think this other thing, we're really trying to focus on collegiate esports and building up. So 5 high schools, 5 colleges. We have a full plan to do it and try to grow. My thing is, why do people give a flying fuck about what's happening in Pittsburgh esports? But I have a lot of experience in nonprofit and community building and team building. So I have a lot of, and with my job, I work in, understanding how the nonprofit and the private sector, when they talk about, oh, they're in DC, they're building a stadium, you know what I mean, for energy or whatever, or in Charlotte, they were going to. I understand, I work in government, so I understand all the pieces that need to go together to get investment for how the government can support that. So I'm planning on how to build an esports stadium. So I'm really appreciative to the people that are coming here. There are like 80 kids that come and play Smash and all kinds of stuff. So that's it. I'm excited on the project where we're going, and I'm trying to stay true to what esports is to me, is helping one kid at one high school or one kid at one college and grow it organically and you still have to make a business out of it, but not try to do it as honest as you can. So that's it.